Hey everyone, just wanted to say before I jump into this mess, I've come out since everything went down, and I've been seeing a therapist for a while now. Honestly, it's helped a ton. I even volunteer a bit, talking to others who've lived through similar stuff. It feels good to help, you know? Anyway, back when I was like 20 and way too naive for my own good, I met this guy, let's call him Nick, at community college in Somerville, Ohio. Nick and I clicked super fast. At first, he just helped me deal with some leftover drama from a bad relationship I was dragging around. Then suddenly, bam, we were dating. It was stupidly fast, like 2 weeks in, and he was already slipping a cheap little ring on my finger, and I was eating it up like it was a Disney movie. The first few months, they were like a dream. Nick was so sweet, always calling me beautiful, doing small things like carrying my books, sending good morning texts, that kind of stuff that just melts your brain when you're too young to know better. I really thought I'd found my soulmate. Spoiler, I hadn't. It didn't take long before cracks started showing. Little things at first. He'd tell me he loved when I wore certain outfits, which really meant he didn't want me wearing anything else. Or he'd pressure me into ordering greasy fast food every night when I actually wanted to eat healthy. He even started hinting that I should skip out on hanging with my friends because they didn't understand our love. Barf. The first real oh shit moment happened maybe 3 months in. I was in the middle of a huge take-home exam for my anatomy class, headphones in, totally zoned out, when Nick barges into my tiny dorm room. He kept nagging me to come with him to some dumb political club meeting he was obsessed with. I said no, multiple times. I needed to finish my work. Without a word, he marched over and slammed my laptop shut right on my fingers. I remember just sitting there, stunned, my hand throbbing, and he just stood there, like he hadn't done anything wrong, and told me I needed to support him more. I'm a pretty passive person when it comes to confrontation, especially back then, so I just went, like an idiot, hurting and all. And it only went downhill from there. Once he saw he could get away with it, he stopped pretending altogether. If Nick wanted sex, we had sex, even when I didn't want to. If he was craving a burger at midnight, guess who was eating fries whether she was hungry or not? If he thought a certain outfit made me look perfect. Yep, that was my new uniform. One day, after a long shift bussing tables at this dingy seafood joint, I was starving, but still trying to be smart about what I ate. Nick's eating habits had already packed like 25 extra pounds on me. I tried to put my foot down and asked for a... So anyway, after that shift, I asked Nick for something specific, like grilled chicken and veggies, something halfway decent for once. He showed up grinning with 2 giant bags of greasy burgers and milkshakes from McDonald's. I just stared at him, and before I could say a word, my manager, who loved butting into everyone's business, jokingly asked if Nick was trying to fatten me up. Nick laughed and said, "Yeah, so nobody else will want her." It was a joke to him, but it stuck in my head like a rusty nail. That was pretty much the moment my binge-eating disorder really rooted itself. Even now, it's something I still battle, years later. Fast forward 3 miserable years. I finally grew enough of a backbone to tell him I wanted out. I thought it would be ugly, but manageable. No. When he came over to grab the last of his crap from my apartment, he lost it, tried to strangle me right there in my hallway. I remember my brain just going blank with terror. And like the idiot trauma-bonded mess I was, I took him back a week later. After that, things got even darker. It was like that one act of violence opened some evil door inside him. From then on, if I ever said no to sex, to anything, he'd hit me, and then do what he wanted anyway. After a while, I just learned it was easier to go limp and let it happen. I started to feel less like a person and more like furniture he could move around whenever he felt like it. In public, if I even hinted at saying no to him, he'd give me this look, like, not angry, not sad, just cold. And I'd know. I'd know there'd be hell to pay later if I didn't back off immediately. When he really wanted to make a point, he'd shove me into the coat closet. Light switch was on the outside. And yeah, I'm still terrified of the dark. Childish, whatever. It's the truth. I'd sit there on the floor, trying not to hyperventilate, listening to him laugh at TikTok videos or whatever on his phone, like nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, I was slowly being broken down from the inside out. Emotionally, mentally, physically. He had this whole plan to make sure no one else would ever want me. Keep me fat, keep me terrified, keep me invisible. If some random dude at the gas station smiled at me, if a girl in class said hi, punishment. Always. The absolute final straw, the thing that finally shattered whatever sick loyalty I had left, happened one night when he got me drunk. Way too drunk. And then he did something that had always been a hard limit for me. Like, even during the worst times, he had respected that boundary. But not that night. He tied me up, gagged me, and when I realized what was happening, all I could do was sob. Just cry and hope it would be over fast. I still have flashes of that night if something triggers me, and it messes me up worse than anything else. Thankfully, and I will always be grateful for this, my now best friend, Emily, basically dragged me out of that situation. I don't think I would have made it without her. I moved out while Nick was at work, blocked his number, and never looked back. I never went to the cops, partly because I had zero proof, partly because I was still so brainwashed that I honestly thought no one would care. He had spent years making sure I felt worthless, and he'd done a damn good job at it. It's been a few years now. I'm in therapy for my anxiety, depression, and PTSD. It's still a process, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like me again. Like I'm growing out of the wreckage he left behind. If you're reading this, and you're stuck in something even remotely like what I went through, please, I'm begging you, get out. It's scary, it's hard, but you are worth saving. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't let anyone convince you that you deserve that kind of pain. Stay safe, friends. You are stronger than you think. So lately, I've been messing around with Hinge. I'm 32 now, and honestly, I've been flying solo for longer than I'd like to admit. I used to roast dating apps nonstop, but one of my buddies kept bragging about meeting his girlfriend on there, so I figured, screw it. Might as well give it a shot. Turned out, Hinge wasn't nearly as awful as I expected. After a few awkward chats and a couple of cringe matches, I started talking to this woman named Jenna. Right off the bat, we just clicked. Like, we both nerded out over the same weird hobbies, and it felt super easy, not forced like most online convos. After about a week of texting back and forth, we decided to meet up in person. I booked us a table at this low-key but really good Italian spot not far from my place here in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Yeah, middle of nowhere, I know. Dinner went way better than I could have hoped. Jenna was funny, smart, and honestly just super easy to talk to. I left that night feeling like I actually had something real brewing. For our second date, we thought it'd be chill to keep it casual. She'd come over to my place, and I'd cook. I'm not gonna lie, I low-key flex when it comes to cooking. My mom's been throwing me in the kitchen since I was like 12, so I'm pretty decent. Plus, my friends always hype up my lasagna, so I figured why not. Jenna rolled up around 7:30 p.m., wearing this oversized sweater that somehow made her look even cuter. Not that I said that out loud, LOL. I made a creamy garlic pasta with chicken, and she seemed into it. We ate, laughed, shared a bottle of wine, and just hung out at the table talking about the dumbest stuff for like an hour. At some point, she asked if she could see the rest of my house. Now, my place isn't anything wild. It's a 3-bedroom ranch-style house I snagged last year after saving up forever. But I'm weirdly proud of it. So I gave her the grand tour, showing off my little home office, the guest room I'm still pretending I'm gonna decorate someday, and even my embarrassingly messy garage. She smiled a lot and said she really liked it, which honestly made me a little giddy, not gonna lie. After we finished the mini tour, she said she needed to get going because she had an early shift the next morning. We hugged at the door, pretty long hug too, or maybe I just imagined that. And she left. A few minutes later, I shot her a text saying I had a great time and hoped we could hang again soon. I figured she'd reply pretty quick like she had before, but nothing. Hours went by. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe she crashed early or something. And eventually, I passed out. Sometime around 4 a.m., I woke up groggy as hell. I tried to roll over and ignore it, but my bladder wasn't having it, so I dragged myself out of bed toward the bathroom. I shuffled half asleep down the hallway, did my business in the bathroom, and was about to crash back into bed when I heard this weird clatter coming from the kitchen. Now reminder, I live alone, no roommates. No cats knocking stuff off counters. Immediate full-body panic. I kinda tiptoed over there like an idiot, not sure what I thought I was gonna do, sneak up on a ghost? And when I got to the kitchen, it was wrecked. Absolute disaster zone. Papers scattered everywhere. Pots and pans tossed around like somebody had been digging for buried treasure or something. I just stood there for a second, thinking maybe I was still dreaming. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the tiniest bit of movement. Someone darting through the doorway into the spare bedroom. My stomach dropped straight to the floor. I literally froze for a second like one of those goats you see in memes, then snapped out of it and grabbed my phone to call the cops. While I was waiting for them to show up, some dumb, heroic part of me decided it would be a good idea to check the guest room. I cracked the door open and nothing. Nobody. Just an open window swinging in the breeze. Whoever it was had pieced out into the night. The police rolled up about 15 minutes later, did a sweep of the house and the yard, but of course, whoever broke in was long gone. After a quick look around, I realized a bunch of my stuff was missing too. My tablet, a couple watches I actually liked, and some cash I'd stupidly left in a kitchen drawer. Yeah, not my brightest moment. By the time the officers finished taking my statement and headed out, it was basically morning. I was wrecked, but managed to crash for like an hour or two before I had to drag myself up for work. Half asleep, I grabbed my phone, hoping maybe Jenna had texted back or something, still being a clueless idiot at this point. Nope. Nothing. So I decided to just call her. And that's when I noticed her number had straight up blocked me. That's when everything started clicking into place, real ugly like. I ended up telling the cops the whole story later that afternoon, and yeah, turns out, Jenna probably wasn't even her real name. Her Hinge profile? Poof. Gone. No Instagram, no TikTok, nothing. It was like she never existed in the first place. When I was around 24, I picked up a job scooping ice cream at this tiny little shop in Fairfield, Tennessee. Super chill gig, honestly. That's where I met one of my closest friends ever. Her name was Cassie. She was 22, just a couple years younger than me, and honestly felt like the little sister I never had. We always tried to line up our shifts together, usually grabbing the evening slots since the daytime ones were snatched up by the workers who'd been there forever. Nights weren't bad, The shop mostly got slammed when a movie let out at the giant cinema across the street. In between rushes, we'd hang out behind the counter, swapping stories about life and whatever nonsense was going on. At the time, I was deep into a long-term relationship that had survived since my junior year of high school, so dating apps were a total mystery to me. But Cassie? She was deep in the trenches of Tinder. She was about 5'9", had this super cute short platinum bob, and was a little curvy, and she owned it. Every shift, it felt like she had a new story to tell. She'd pull up her phone and we'd snicker over the absolutely insane pickup lines dudes would send her. One night, we were squeezed behind the counter again, half working, half distracted, when she showed me a new guy she matched with. His name was Zach, supposedly 29. He had this whole artsy vibe going. Long dark hair, neatly trimmed beard, glasses. Honestly, the guy looked like he stepped out of some indie magazine. My gut reaction was catfish alert, but I didn't want to kill her excitement, so I just kept my skeptical mouth shut. Cassie told me she and Zach were planning to meet up the next evening. I wished her luck, gave her a dramatic wink, and we got back to scooping cookie dough ice cream and pretending we cared about closing duties. The next night around 10:30 p.m., I shot her a quick call just to see how the date had gone. No answer. I figured, hey, no news probably meant things were going well, so I just shrugged it off and crashed early. We were supposed to work together the next night, and I was pumped to hear the tea. But when I clocked in, Cassie wasn't there. Totally not like her. She was that 10 minutes early kind of person. After 15 minutes of awkwardly wiping down already clean counters, I tried calling her. Nada. I didn't have her mom's number or anything. Regret of my life right there. And honestly, I started panicking way too fast. I hung around for a while, trying not to spiral, but after about half an hour, my gut told me something was seriously wrong. So I called the police. Turns out Cassie's mom had already reported her missing the night before. She never made it back home after her date. I remember feeling this weird, cold wave crash over me when the officer told me that. Days dragged into weeks. No news, no sightings, nothing. I kept showing up to work, but everything about the place felt hollow without her. I kept texting her phone like an idiot, even though I knew she wouldn't answer. I stayed in touch with her mom, who was way stronger than I could have ever been, but the whole situation made me feel helpless and furious. The cops seemed stuck, like they were just spinning their wheels. 2 weeks slipped by, then 3. Still no arrests, still no solid leads. It was eating me alive. Finally, after another silent, miserable week, I snapped. I couldn't just sit there anymore, feeling useless. I needed to do something. Anything. So I came up with a plan. So, after a couple nights of spiraling, I decided to do something kinda reckless. I made myself a Tinder account. I picked a few pics where I looked halfway decent, you know, the ones where the lighting does all the work, and slapped together a quick profile. I couldn't get Zach's face out of my head. I mean, there was always a chance those photos weren't even real, but it was all I had. So, I opened up Tinder and started swiping like a madwoman. Left, left, left. I wasn't looking for Mr. Right, just that face. After what felt like a million profiles and cramping up my thumb, there he was. Same face, but now he was calling himself Mason. Cute. Real original, dude. I stared at the screen for a second, heart pounding like I was defusing a bomb or something, then swiped right without overthinking it. I shoved my phone into my pocket after that, because my nerves were doing cartwheels. Later that evening, I cracked and checked the app. And yep, he matched with me. He even sent the first message. My stomach turned a little. It felt wrong chatting with him, but this could actually lead somewhere, so I sucked it up. I replied, throwing out a ridiculously flirty message that made me want to crawl out of my skin. Seriously, if you ever read the stuff I sent him, you'd lose all respect for me. But desperate times, right? We went back and forth for a bit until he suggested grabbing drinks. I said yes so fast my thumbs practically broke. The next night, we met up at this grimy little bar across town in a part of Marshall Springs that I didn't usually hang out in. I spotted him tucked away in a corner booth, nursing a drink. And yep, he looked exactly like his photos. Which, honestly, shook me a little because I half expected some totally different dude to show up. I slapped on the fakest smile you've ever seen and sat down, trying to act normal when all I really wanted to do was run screaming out the door. We talked for maybe an hour. It felt like forever. I didn't mention Cassie once, even though it was all over the local news by then. Sitting there, pretending everything was fine, staring at him while wondering what secrets he was hiding. It was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done. He gave me straight-up goosebumps. There was something off about him, even when he was trying to act charming. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was the guy. I didn't really think this far ahead when I made the Tinder plan, so now I was scrambling in my brain for what to do next. I just kept making small talk, laughing at dumb jokes, pretending to sip my drink. Then, surprise, surprise, Mason asked if I wanted to come back to his place. I smiled politely and said I couldn't. Mumbled something about having an early shift. Then I booked it out of there so fast I'm pretty sure I left a cartoon dust cloud behind me. The second I hit the street, I pulled out my phone and called 911 with shaking hands. Luckily, I got patched through to the detective handling Cassie's case. I told him everything, about the fake name, the Tinder match, the creepy date. Honestly, I half expected them to brush me off, but to my huge relief, he took it seriously. I gave them all the info I had, screenshots, chat logs, everything. They promised to look into it. About a week later, I got the call. They had arrested Mason, real name, not surprisingly, wasn't Mason either, and he confessed. Said it was an accident, but he still led them to where he left Cassie. I'm still working at the ice cream shop, weirdly enough. Life sort of moved on around me, but there's this heavy piece missing that'll probably never come back. Finding out the truth helped in some ways, but man, some nights I still just sit there missing her like crazy. Back in 2015, when I was around 29, I got this random friend request from a dude. Let's call him Chris. He seemed nice enough, so when he asked if I wanted to grab a coffee sometime, I figured, why not? We ended up going out twice, and honestly, things felt pretty good at first. I thought we clicked. But then came the plan for our third date. I showed up at the coffee shop we picked out, some cute little spot downtown in Willow Creek, and waited, and waited, and waited, like a total idiot. After 2 hours sitting there pretending to read the same page of a book over and over, I finally accepted the obvious. Chris had straight up ghosted me. And get this, he didn't just ghost me that day. He went completely MIA for like almost 3 months. Then, out of nowhere, he started popping up again, unblocking me on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it. I guess part of me was lonely, or maybe just curious, so I let him back in. But believe me, I was way more cautious this time. Spoiler alert, huge mistake. Turns out, Chris was secretly dating a bunch of other girls the whole time. When I found out, that was it for me. I dumped him right then and there. I figured he could have his little side chicks. I wasn't about to be anyone's backup plan. Thought that was the end of it? Oh no. After about 5 months of blissful silence, December 2017 rolls around, and my phone starts blowing up. Chris had gone full psycho mode. He was calling me literally 80 plus times a day, per platform. WhatsApp, regular calls, DMs, you name it. Plus hundreds of texts. I wish I were exaggerating. At one point, he even started following me to my new job. I'd just started working at a marketing firm in Riverdale in February 2018. And it got worse. He started calling my boyfriend, bless his patient soul, and even my boss on repeat. Eventually, HR and the company's risk management team pulled me into a meeting. They told me straight up, I needed to get a lawyer because they wanted to press charges against Chris for harassment and stalking. Not exactly the conversation you expect on a Tuesday afternoon, but here we are. I'm in South Africa, and here, if you mess with a protection order, it's considered a criminal offense. You could get slapped with a hefty fine, or even up to 5 years behind bars. So I pulled together all the evidence I had, the texts, the call logs, everything, and handed it over to my lawyer. Meanwhile, my company sent all their CCTV footage to him too. And because karma has perfect timing, in April 2018, Chris got himself arrested. Turns out he had cocaine and meth stashed in his car. Real genius, right? After that, I didn't hear a peep from him. Not until his court date rolled around for the harassment case. Well, let's just say my Christmas that year was the best one ever. Chris got sentenced to 15 years for the drugs, another 5 for stalking and harassment. So, yep, 20 years locked up. And honestly, couldn't have happened to a more deserving guy. Chris, if you're somehow reading this, stay the hell away from me, my boyfriend, my co-workers, and my family. Forever. Enjoy prison life. And for real, don't drop the soap. Honestly, if you'd told me a year ago that I'd be trying online dating, I would have laughed in your face. I always figured it was for people way cooler or way more desperate than me. But after watching a few of my buddies meet their partners through apps, one even got married last fall, I figured, hey, what's the worst that could happen? Plus, let's be real, my Saturday nights were starting to look suspiciously like Netflix marathons and takeout repeats. So one rainy Thursday, I caved and downloaded this big-name app everyone was raving about. After a few weeks of awkward small talk and a couple of no-shows, I matched with this dude named Trevor. His profile didn't scream try hard like a lot of others. He just seemed like a solid, normal guy. Worked in tech, liked hiking, dogs, and had a sense of humor that actually made me snort once while scrolling. We clicked pretty quickly through messages, and after about a week of texting, we decided to meet up. Picked this little coffee shop a few neighborhoods over that I already loved. Super chill place with brick walls, succulents everywhere, and the kind of coffee that's way too expensive but so worth it. I threw on my best I'm casual but I totally tried outfit and headed over. I was kinda jittery, not gonna lie. Meeting internet strangers isn't exactly second nature to me. But when I saw Trevor waiting by the door, all that nervousness melted. He looked exactly like his pictures, thank God. After hearing all those nightmare stories about people getting catfished, I had been low-key bracing for some weirdness. The date itself? Pretty great. Easy convo. Lots of laughs. It genuinely felt like catching up with someone I hadn't seen in a while rather than meeting for the first time. After we finished our coffees, we wandered around a bit, poking into random little shops nearby. When it was time to part ways, he suggested we hang out again soon. I said yes, figuring, why not? Fast forward a few days later, I was wandering through the local market mart, trying to remember if I needed milk, when, bam, there's Trevor in the fruit section, looking extremely focused on avocados. At first, it was weird. Like, your brain doesn't know if it's a casual sighting or some cosmic prank. But we ended up chatting for a bit. He even joked that our second date should just be us judging produce together. I laughed it off, thinking it was just one of those small world things. Then, that Sunday, I decided to hit up my favorite trail for a morning jog. It was one of those crisp, clear days where it actually feels good to be outside and not glued to your couch. I'm jogging along, earbuds in, minding my own business, when who do I see chilling on a bench? Yup, Trevor. Just sitting there, scrolling on his phone like he belonged to the park or something. I slowed down, caught his eye, and we both just kind of laughed at the ridiculousness of it. He said he was there to soak up the vibes and get some fresh air. We chatted a little more about weekend plans before I continued my run, but by that point, I couldn't help but wonder if these so-called coincidences were actually just coincidences. At first, I kept telling myself it was no big deal. I mean, we obviously lived kinda close, and it's not like my go-to spots were a secret. It's a small enough city, right? Stuff like this happens. But then, it kept happening. Like, weirdly often. I'd be grabbing a burrito at my favorite hole-in-the-wall lunch place. Bam, there's Trevor, sitting 2 tables over. Browsing for a new mystery novel at the indie bookstore? Oh hey, Trevor's in the sci-fi aisle. Even once at my gym, dripping sweat and looking like a goblin. Guess who's casually doing bicep curls in the corner? After a few more coincidences, it stopped feeling cute and started feeling off. The city wasn't that tiny. Sure, maybe we just had similar taste in food and books and workouts, but at some point, it crossed into weird territory. I vented to a couple of my friends about it over drinks. They tried to be chill about it, suggesting maybe we just had similar routines or hangout preferences. I nodded along, but honestly, my gut was screaming at me that something wasn't right. One night, I decided to do a little test. Instead of my normal route home, I took the long way, wound through side streets, took an extra 10 minutes, even ducked into a gas station for a random snack. Super random. Just to see. And guess what? As I was about to cross the last street before my building, there he was. Trevor. Across the road. Casually strolling like he just happened to be there. We locked eyes and he gave this little wave. But this time I didn't stop. Just kept walking like I didn't even notice. That's when it really clicked for me. This wasn't just random. Whether he was doing it on purpose or not, it was happening. And it felt wrong. I started thinking back on all the dumb stuff I'd posted online lately. Selfies with geotags, Instagram stories from my favorite brunch spots, check-ins without even thinking twice. It would honestly be embarrassingly easy to piece together my whole life if someone really wanted to. After that, I pretty much ghosted. Left his last few texts on read, locked down all my socials, turned my Instagram private, deleted my location tags, basically went into online stealth mode. And for a little while, it actually worked. No random sightings, no awkward run-ins. I let myself breathe again, started feeling normal. Until one Sunday morning. I swung by my favorite little coffee and bagel place, feeling good, headphones in, and spotted him. Trevor. Again. Sitting 2 tables over, pretending to be engrossed in his phone. That was it for me. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was just plain obvious. Dude was showing up on purpose. After that, I got serious. Changed up my routine completely. New grocery store, different gym, even started jogging at a park on the opposite side of town. Honestly, it was a hassle and made everything way less convenient. But the anxiety wasn't worth it. Eventually, the sightings stopped. Maybe he finally realized I wasn't playing along. Maybe he just got bored. Either way, I was so relieved. The whole experience taught me a lot, though. I learned the hard way how easy it is to overshare without even realizing it, and how important it is to trust that little voice in your head when it's telling you something's off. So yeah, nothing super dramatic happened. but it was creepy enough to make me way more careful about my privacy. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like that, please, seriously, listen to your gut. It's usually trying to save you from something worse. This happened a few years back when I was 21 and just starting my second semester at a small college in Oregon. Some friends and I were just killing time one night at our little off-campus house. There were 5 of us total, mostly just hanging out, scrolling through TikTok, and being chaotic. At some point, my roommate Mel dared me to finally set up a Bumble account, which I'd been stubbornly avoiding for months. We were all piled on the couch passing my phone around, swiping like maniacs, laughing at random bios. After a few joke matches, I stumbled across this one guy. His name was Dylan, and he actually seemed normal? Cute too. Mel immediately said, "He looks trustworthy," which, in hindsight, was a dumb thing to base anything on, but whatever. I sent him a message because why not? He responded pretty quickly, and we ended up chatting back and forth the whole evening. Dylan told me he also went to my college, huge green flag or so I thought, and casually asked if he could swing by. I know looking back it sounds completely reckless, but in my head I figured, hey, there's 5 of us here, what could go wrong? I gave him our address, cringe, and he said he'd be there in about 10 minutes. Right on schedule, we spotted a car pulling into the driveway. Dylan hopped out, and honestly, he looked exactly like his Bumble pics, rare and kinda refreshing. He knocked, I answered the door, and the moment he stepped in and saw my whole squad camped out in the living room, his face did this weird half-surprised, half-panicked thing. He barely even said hello before muttering something about needing to leave and practically bolting back to his car. After that, radio silence. Not a single text. So, naturally, I unmatched him and moved on. Fast forward 2 days later, and guess who pops up trying to friend me on Facebook and follow me on both Instagram and Snapchat? Yep, Dylan. So, against my better judgment, and mostly because I was bored, I accepted Dylan's friend request, and we started chatting again. But honestly, it was like he had completely swapped personalities overnight. Before, he was funny and kind of charming. Now he was straight up rude and weirdly aggressive. I got major ick vibes almost immediately and decided to cut it off. Deleted him off everything without a second thought. Next morning, guess who shows up in my friend requests again? Yup, Dylan. Round 2. This time, I was over it. I blocked him on everything, thinking that would be the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. The very next day, I start getting follow requests from accounts with random usernames that were definitely him. Like, dude didn't even try to hide it. I got fed up, sent him one blunt Snapchat telling him to leave me alone, blocked him again, and figured that was the last chapter of this embarrassing saga. For a few days, it actually seemed like it worked. Life went back to normal, classes were stressful, and I was back to stress snacking on McDonald's after night lectures like nothing happened. Then, about a week later, I came home after my bio lab and noticed a random car idling right outside our little rental house. Didn't think much of it at first. College town, lots of weird parking. I walked by it, fumbled with my keys, and that's when I heard the car door slam. I turned around and yep, it was Dylan, storming toward me with a look that could curdle milk. I immediately told him to back off, but he didn't even hesitate. He grabbed my arm hard enough to make me stumble. And of course, because my luck is always garbage, my roommates were both still stuck in back-to-back classes across campus. I was alone. I tried pulling away and telling him to let go, but he just barked at me to shut up and started dragging me toward his car like it was the most normal thing in the world. I freaked out and started yelling my head off. Luckily, fate wasn't completely against me. Our neighbor across the street, this massive dude who played on the college football team, must have heard me because he charged out of his house like an absolute beast. He shouted at Dylan to let me go and started heading straight for us. Dylan dropped my arm like it was on fire, scrambled into his car, and peeled out down the street like a cartoon villain. Later that day, I marched myself straight into the university office and reported the whole thing. That's when I found out the cherry on top. Dylan didn't even go to our college. He was a complete rando. And now he knows where I live. So, that's been fun to think about every time a random car drives by. My name's Ryan, and this all went down about 3 weeks ago near Mesa, New Mexico. I had recently matched with this girl, Mia, on Chispa. It's that Latino dating app that's kinda like Tinder, but more niche. We met up in this tiny town nobody really talks about called Silver Creek. It was a lazy Sunday, and honestly, my plan was to head into Mesa, about an hour drive, to do some DoorDash runs because, yeah, I was broke and trying to scrape together rent money. Right when I was about to leave, Mia hits me up and asks if I could give her a ride to her friend's place in Mesa since it was on the way. I figured why not, so I swung by and picked her up. We made it there without much happening, dropped her off, and I went about my night, just hustling deliveries, trying not to think about how much gas I was burning. Fast forward to around 8 p.m., and it's already getting dark when I get a WhatsApp ping from Mia. She said she and her friend were going to head over to her friend's mom's house, which was apparently just 5 minutes away, and asked if I could scoop her up in about an hour. Cool, easy enough, I thought. About 30 minutes later, though, she sent me her live location with this super stressed out message saying she had left her purse back at her friend's, and some family friend had offered to give her a quick ride to go get it. Only, after they grabbed her purse, dude started driving in the complete opposite direction. Not towards where I was, but way out towards some random part of town. She told me she was in a gray pickup truck, and I could feel my stomach just drop. I didn't even think. I just gunned it toward the live pin she dropped. Problem was, every time I got near, the location would move again because they weren't stopping. It turned into this mini cat and mouse game through the side streets until finally, I spot them pulling out of one of those sketchy drive-through liquor stores. I guess Mia spotted me in the rear view because next thing I know, the pickup pulls off to the side of the road, and that's my chance. I floored my tiny Kia Soul, cut across a lane, and boxed the dude in just enough for Mia to pop the door open and dive into my car. I didn't even think. I just slammed on the gas and peeled out of there like a bat out of hell. Maybe this isn't the craziest online dating horror story you've ever heard, but man, in that moment, my brain was just a swirl of panic and adrenaline. Once Mia was in my car, she broke down screaming and crying, full-on meltdown. Honestly, I think that's when it really hit me too, just how bad that could have gone. I've been through my share of weird and sketchy stuff, but nothing compares to fearing for someone else's safety. It's a whole different kind of terror. After my divorce wrapped up, life hit me like a truck, not gonna lie. Money was tighter than ever. I was scraping by working nights at this little diner, and I had this tiny one-bedroom apartment I could barely afford. It wasn't anything special, just 4 walls and a roof. But even that felt like a stretch most months. Around that same time, I decided to dust off my old Tinder account. I'd dabbled with it before. Fun fact, it's actually how I met my ex-husband. One evening, I was curled up on my raggedy couch in my place down in Springdale, just mindlessly swiping. Honestly, nobody really stood out. Maybe I was being too picky. Or maybe my heart just hadn't healed yet. Probably a messy mix of both. Then, After like 20 minutes of meh, a profile popped up that made me pause. His name was Leo, and he was a few years younger than me. Not by much, but enough that it gave me a second of hesitation. I've always gravitated toward older guys, usually ones with a little more life under their belt. But something about Leo kept me looking. I scrolled through his pics. One was him chilling at Clearwater Beach, another flexing in the middle of downtown Chicago, and one where he was straight up posing next to a private jet. I know it sounds kind of shallow. Okay, a lot shallow. But I'm just being real. That jet pic definitely caught my eye. Not gonna lie though, it wasn't just the money vibes. He had this big, goofy smile in every photo that made him seem genuine. It was a weird mix. Anyway, after debating way longer than I care to admit, I finally swiped right. My one and only right swipe that night. Then I tossed my phone on the nightstand and passed out. Next morning, I cracked my eyes open, grabbed my phone, and saw the notification. It's a match. I didn't even have to guess who it was. Since Leo was the only guy I swiped right on, it had to be him. I opened the app, and sure enough, there was a message from him already. It just said, "Hey." Literally just, "Hey." Ugh. That's one of my biggest turnoffs. Like, if you're gonna message first, at least try a little. But I was feeling generous and curious, so I decided to reply. Conversation started off kinda slow, but after a few back and forths, it picked up a little. Nothing earth-shattering, but he was polite and funny in this slightly awkward way. After maybe 10 messages total, Leo asked if I wanted to meet up for a date. Bold move. I figured, why not? We set something up for the following Saturday night. When the day rolled around, I was way more nervous than I wanted to admit. He picked this fancy little Italian place I'd never even heard of, way swankier than anything I'd have picked. Leo showed up looking sharp, not overdressed, but like he actually cared. The conversation? Eh? It was fine. A lot of weird pauses and awkward laughs. Nothing terrible, just off somehow. Like he was trying to act casual but didn't know how. When the check came, my stomach knotted up. That place was not cheap, and my bank account was already gasping for air. But before I could even start worrying about it, Leo snatched the bill without blinking and waved off my half-hearted offer to split. Relief doesn't even begin to cover it. We said goodnight out front, and I caught the late bus back home feeling a mix of weirdly happy and weirdly unsettled. Over the next few weeks, Leo and I went on a few more dates. Same general vibe. Good times, a little awkward, but nothing deal-breaking. The thing was, every time we hung out, the scale of things just escalated. It got crazy. One weekend, he booked this river cruise package. I Googled it later, and it had to cost at least a few grand. And we weren't even officially dating yet. Look, I'm not one to turn down a good time, but deep down, something about it didn't sit right. Like, who spends that kind of money on someone they barely know? It felt less romantic and more desperate. I don't know. Red flags don't usually come wrapped in private yacht packages, but still. Things really spiraled when Leo texted me out of the blue and invited me on a trip to Cancun. Like, full vacation package, plane tickets, all that. I won't lie, the idea of sipping margaritas on the beach sounded amazing, but in my gut, I knew I wasn't ready for anything that intense with a guy I barely knew. Plus, it felt rushed. So, feeling super guilty, I texted him back and told him I didn't think we should keep seeing each other. A few seconds later, my phone lit up. Leo was calling. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Big mistake. The second I said hello, he just unloaded on me, like full-on screaming, saying the nastiest, most vile stuff you can imagine. I'd never heard anything like it, especially from someone who used to act all sweet and awkward. It was like he'd ripped off a mask or something. I sat there, frozen, holding the phone to my ear while he went off for what felt like forever. When I finally snapped out of it, I hung up and immediately powered my phone off. I was shaking. My brain kept looping the same horrible thought. He knows where I live. He had dropped me off at my place more than once. I couldn't sleep that night. Every little noise had me jumping. When I finally turned my phone back on the next morning, it exploded with notifications. Leo had called probably 50 times and sent just as many texts, all just as ugly and hateful as before. I didn't even read them all, just scrolled in horror and put the phone face down. I stayed radio silent for a few days, but part of me felt like I needed closure or something. Like, maybe if I called and explained myself better, he'd chill out. Spoiler, terrible idea. I dialed his number one afternoon, my hands sweating the whole time. He picked up instantly and immediately started screaming again. No pause, no breath, just pure rage. I tried for about 30 seconds to talk him down, but it was hopeless. He even demanded that I pay him back for every single date we went on. I couldn't even afford my rent, let alone pay him back for yacht cruises and steak dinners I never asked for. So I hung up again, blocked his number this time, and tried to move on. That night, I dragged myself to work, still waitressing night shifts back then. But my head was a mess the entire time. Every clatter of the kitchen door made me jump. I kept imagining Leo showing up, demanding money, or worse. When my shift finally ended around 1 a.m., I practically ran to catch the bus home. When I got to my building, something immediately felt off. My front door, which I always triple-checked before leaving, was hanging wide open. I stood there for a second, heart hammering, telling myself maybe I'd just forgotten to lock it. Yeah, right. I slowly crept inside, whispering, "Hello?" like an idiot in a horror movie. Silence. I moved through the apartment room by room, feeling like I was going to puke from the fear. Nothing was stolen, but when I got to my bedroom, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, right in the middle of my bed, was a piece of paper. I picked it up with shaking hands. On it, scrawled in messy black ink, were the words, "You're dead." I didn't think. I just turned and bolted out of there, not even bothering to grab anything. I ran straight to my friend Cassie's place across town and called the cops from her living room. Long story short, the police took it very seriously. Between my statements, the voicemails, texts, and the evidence from my apartment, they had enough to go pick Leo up. Turns out, Leo was not some rich jet-setter at all. Dude was flat broke, drowning in debt, and funding his lavish dates with a stack of maxed-out credit cards. For a while, I couldn't figure out why someone would do all that. Then one night, while binge-watching Netflix to numb my anxiety, I stumbled on this wild documentary about a guy who used Tinder to con women. He'd wine and dine them, then trick them into loaning him money once he built up enough trust, and, surprise, surprise, he never paid them back. My situation hadn't gotten that far, thank God, but it definitely seemed like Leo was setting me up for the same thing. Looking back, all the over-the-top gestures and love-bombing make a lot more sense now, and not in a good way. After the cops dealt with him, I never heard from Leo again. I moved to a new apartment 2 months later and got a new phone number, just to be safe. And yeah, now when someone seems too perfect online, I hear my granddad's voice loud and clear in my head. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So, a little while ago, I decided to finally dive into the chaos that is online dating. Honestly, I'd always been one of those people who thought it sounded kinda sketchy. But after hearing my coworker's cousin met her now husband on Tinder, I figured, hey, what's the worst that could happen? I made an account, threw up a few half-decent pics, and started doing the endless scroll through profiles. After some awkward small talk with a few guys, I ended up chatting with this dude named Jake. He seemed normal enough, worked a steady job, liked hiking and photography, pretty standard stuff, and didn't send any red flag vibes. We even bonded over the fact that we both loved the same sci-fi author. After about a week of messaging, he suggested we grab coffee. I figured, sure, why not? We settled on this tiny cafe downtown. It had a cozy vibe and a ton of good reviews on Yelp, which honestly helped calm my nerves a little. I got there early because, anxiety, and picked a table near the windows just to feel a little safer since, hello, stranger danger. Jake showed up right on time, and he looked just like his photos. Average height, casual button-up shirt, easy smile. No horror story vibes immediately, which felt like a win already. We ordered our coffees and slid into one of the corner booths where it was quieter. At first, the conversation was honestly great. We talked about work, random hobbies, favorite pizza places around town, typical first meetup stuff. He even asked a lot about my job, like he was genuinely interested, and that made me think, hey, maybe this won't be a complete disaster. I actually started to relax a little. You know that rare feeling when you're like, okay, this could maybe be something? Yeah, I was almost there. Key word, almost. Because if it had stayed that way, I wouldn't be here telling this story, would I? Out of nowhere, his vibe shifted. He started diving into this weirdly intense monologue about his 5-year plan. At first, it was harmless. He wanted to travel, maybe move out west, typical stuff. But then it got real specific. Like, weird specific. Jake started rattling off exact ages he wanted to hit certain milestones, the number of kids he planned to have, even the color of the house he wanted to buy someday. I'm talking blueprint-level planning. Now I get it. Some people like having goals. But the way he spoke about it felt super rigid, like he had a script for his life and absolutely no room for improvisation. It honestly gave me this creeping, skin-crawly feeling, like I was being interviewed for a permanent role in someone else's movie. I tried to pivot us back to lighter stuff, asked him about his favorite hiking trails, or if he'd been to that one photography exhibit everyone was posting about on TikTok. But Jake wasn't having it. He doubled down, and somehow it got even weirder. He started talking about his past relationships, but not in a lessons learned kind of way. Nope. He listed them off like failed business ventures, super cold and detached, explaining exactly why each one didn't meet the criteria. I sat there, sipping my coffee way too fast, thinking, this man is one flowchart away from making me sign a contract. It hit me all at once. Jake wasn't actually seeing me. Not as a person, anyway. I was basically just a checklist he was trying to fill out, like a walking, talking application form. Suddenly, everything about that cafe felt suffocating. The cozy vibe? Gone. The smell of roasted coffee beans? Made me nauseous. Even the weight of my mug felt like too much. I tried casually looking around, hoping to catch something, anything, to snap me out of the weird bubble I was trapped in. But the background noise had kind of faded into white static, and all I could hear was Jake's voice laying out his life blueprint like he was giving a PowerPoint presentation. Meanwhile, my stomach was staging a full rebellion. I'd never been in a situation like this before, and honestly, my brain was scrambling. Do I just sit here and tough it out? Fake a phone call? Set off the fire alarm? Kidding, mostly. And the wild part? Jake was completely oblivious. Like not even a flicker of awareness that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a normal first date convo. It felt less like a casual coffee meetup and more like I'd accidentally walked into a job interview for a future wife, immediate hire. I started panic thinking through escape plans. Maybe I could fake getting a text from a friend, say my dog needed emergency surgery. Note, I don't even have a dog. As I opened my mouth to throw out whatever half-baked excuse I'd landed on, Jake finally paused. There was this awkward, heavy silence hanging between us. He looked at me, waiting for, I don't even know what. Validation? Agreement? A high five for his super intense future timeline? Trying to keep it polite, because social conditioning is strong, I mumbled something about needing to check on my car. Super believable, right? I grabbed my purse and basically power walked out of there before he could say much else. I caught a glimpse of his face as I left. He looked kind of crushed. And yeah, I felt a tiny pang of guilt. But honestly, survival mode had kicked in. The second I hit the fresh air outside, it was like my whole body let out this massive sigh of relief. I took a deep breath, feeling the crisp evening air cool my flushed face, and made a beeline for my car like it was some kind of life raft. Driving home, I couldn't stop replaying the whole thing in my head. Like, was I overreacting? Did I just freak out because someone actually had their life together? Spoiler, no. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't his ambition that weirded me out. It was the way he talked about it all, like I was supposed to slot neatly into his master plan without even having a say. When I finally got home, I deleted the app off my phone. Not permanently, just a timeout, you know? I needed to remember why I even wanted to date in the first place. It wasn't to be someone's background character. It was to meet people, share experiences, and maybe build something real, not something pre-scripted. I haven't sworn off dating apps forever, but now I move way slower. I'm way pickier about who I agree to meet IRL. It's all about that balance, being open to new connections without throwing my gut feelings out the window. Honestly, I'm weirdly grateful for that wild afternoon with Jake. It taught me something I probably would have learned the hard way eventually. Always trust your instincts, even if everything looks good on paper. I'm 28 now, but this happened when I was 26. Out of pure boredom one night, I decided to finally give Tinder a shot. I'd always been curious if those dating apps actually worked, or if it was just people ghosting each other non-stop. At first, it was pretty much what you'd expect. A few matches here and there, a handful of awkward small talks that died out after like 2 messages. Nothing really exciting. That was until I matched with this girl named Jenna. She was 24, lived just 3 miles from me, and honestly, she looked super sweet in her pics. Right after we matched, I shot her a quick message, because I figured, why wait? She replied back about an hour later, which, honestly, felt like a win in itself at that point. We started chatting about random stuff, music, favorite foods, the usual first convo stuff, and she actually seemed really down to earth. 2 days into texting, Jenna suggested we meet up in person. I was a little surprised because most of the people I talked to before would ghost way before meeting up ever came up. But she seemed cool, so I agreed. She mentioned she worked late shifts all week and suggested we meet at this park called Westlake Gardens around 10 p.m. Not exactly my dream first date setting, but I figured, why not? So the next night, I drove out there. Westlake Gardens was pretty big, with random picnic benches everywhere, and this little pond tucked near a bunch of trees. Honestly, it was kind of creepy being there that late. Not gonna lie, it felt like the start of a bad horror movie. But whatever, I wanted to meet her. I wasn't exactly sure where I was supposed to park, so I just pulled over to the side of the main road, killed the engine, and shot her a quick message on Tinder letting her know I was there. She texted back almost right away saying, So sorry. Running about 5 minutes late. Be there soon. I just sat in my car, staring out the windows. The place was absolutely deserted at that hour. Not a single car or person in sight. I started second-guessing if this was a good idea, but part of me really wanted to see it through. Jenna had seemed genuinely nice, and I didn't want to chicken out and miss something that could be cool. After a few more minutes, my phone buzzed again. It was her. The message just said, "I'm here. Meet me by the pond." I glanced around, but there were no cars pulling in, no one walking up. Just me and the empty park. Honestly, I figured maybe Jenna had just parked somewhere I couldn't see, like behind the restrooms or one of the back lots. It was pretty dark, barely any working lights, just a few busted old lampposts flickering across the park. I climbed out of my car, feeling a little sketched out but still trying to stay positive. Shot her another message saying I was heading over to the pond. The place was weirdly big once you started walking, and every little noise just felt super loud in the empty space. When I got to the pond area, it was dead silent. No sign of anyone. Right then, I heard a car rumbling down the main road. I turned, hoping it was her pulling in. A beat-up black car rolled up and stopped next to my car, then kinda awkwardly parked a little bit ahead. It looked ancient, like maybe it hadn't passed inspection in years. I squinted but couldn't make out who was driving. Too far away and way too dark. I started making my way toward it, already getting that sinking feeling in my stomach that maybe something was way off. That's when I heard this loud crunch behind me, like someone stepping through a pile of dry leaves. Before I could even turn around, someone slammed into me from behind and knocked me face first into the dirt. Before I even had time to react, I felt a solid kick right in my back. Instinct kicked in, and I tried scrambling to my feet. But then some huge dude pinned me down, just full-on wrestling me like he was in a football game or something. Definitely not Jenna, unless she hit the gym every day for the past 5 years. I caught a glimpse of him. Guy was wearing a ratty hoodie, and he was massive. He tried to grab my arms while dragging me by my legs toward the direction of my car, like he was planning to toss me in that creepy beater. I flailed like my life depended on it, which, honestly, it probably did. Somehow, I managed to kick hard enough to slip free for a second. I didn't waste time. I booked it straight into the woods, didn't even think about it. Just full-on sprinted through trees and bushes, not even caring if I got scratched up or tripped. I didn't stop running until I made it to the other side of the park, where there were a few cracked old streets and a busted vending machine next to a laundromat. After catching my breath and making sure no one was chasing me, I called my buddy Nate. The second he heard what happened, he peeled out of his driveway and got to me in like 10 minutes. We drove back to where my car was, heart still pounding like crazy. By the time I checked Tinder again, Jenna's account was already deleted. Blocked. Gone. Honestly, I felt like such an idiot for falling for it. But at the same time, I'm just grateful I didn't end up being a missing person poster. Hey, I'm Mia, 27 now, and yeah. Online dating was always one of those things I kinda rolled my eyes at. Like, it sounded funny in theory, but I never really thought I'd actually do it. Then one random night in 2017, after a couple glasses of wine and a little too much scrolling through TikTok, I figured, why not? So, I slapped together a profile, started swiping, and eventually matched with this guy, Logan. At first glance, Logan seemed cool enough. Normal job he seemed to like, decent smile, nothing too flashy. We chatted back and forth for a few days, nothing super deep, but he came off as pretty chill. Eventually, we agreed to grab a drink together. We picked this crowded bar in downtown Greenville. The kind of place that's always packed enough that you don't have to worry about weird vibes. The night went smoothly, honestly. We did the usual first date dance, talked about our jobs, TV shows we pretended to love, random hobbies. He was weirdly into model trains, which I kind of found adorable. Logan was attentive, asked good questions, and actually listened instead of waiting for his turn to talk. No immediate red flags, nothing that set off my internal sirens. Then, a few days later, things started getting weird. I got a random DM on Instagram from a totally unfamiliar account. It was short, just a couple of words. "Watch out for Logan. He's not who you think he is." I legit laughed out loud when I read it. Like, what? Some troll just being dramatic? I didn't even reply, just deleted it and moved on. Logan and I kept talking like normal, even set up another date to check out this cute little sushi place he liked. I wasn't thinking about the message at all until more started trickling in. Different accounts, but all saying the same sort of cryptic stuff. Warnings, hints, just enough to be unsettling. These weren't just spam bots either. The messages felt personal. Like whoever was sending them knew something. It wasn't some mass send scam. It felt targeted. Still, I brushed it off. Logan hadn't given me any real reason to freak out. But you know how once an idea plants itself in your head, you can't really unthink it? I figured a little harmless internet stalking couldn't hurt, just for peace of mind. I dug around, Facebook, LinkedIn, the usual. But honestly, nothing sketchy popped up. Same boring selfies, boring posts about brunch, a couple of pictures of his cat. I tried to tell myself it was just some stupid prank, but the messages kept coming. Every time they chipped away a little more at the part of me that trusted what I saw. About a week later, the vibe around me shifted, and not in a good way. Every time my phone buzzed, even if it was just a spam email or some random TikTok notification, my stomach would knot up. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, or maybe even played. It honestly felt like someone was trying to mess with my head before anything real could even get off the ground. At one point, I thought, okay, maybe Logan pissed off an ex who decided to go full keyboard warrior on me. But honestly, without proof, it was just me spiraling into worst-case scenarios. We ended up meeting up again at this indie coffee shop in Westport. Super cozy, fairy lights everywhere, the whole Pinterest aesthetic. I tried acting normal, even though my brain was racing the whole time. Logan seemed exactly the same. Chatty, sweet, totally chill. Sitting across from him, it was almost impossible to connect the guy sipping overpriced lattes with the weird warnings haunting my inbox. I wanted to just blurt it out, ask him if he had some psycho ex lurking in the shadows. But I chickened out. I didn't want to seem like one of those people who treats random internet drama like gospel. But after that meetup, things started getting even weirder. I noticed this beat-up silver Honda Civic that kept parking a few houses down from mine. Not just once or twice, like frequently. Always idling way longer than made sense. At first, I thought I was just being jumpy. But then my Instagram sent me alerts about suspicious login attempts from cities I'd never even been to. I changed all my passwords, beefed up my privacy settings, even turned off my location sharing everywhere. But that eerie feeling just wouldn't go away. Eventually, I decided enough was enough. I texted Logan, telling him that work had gotten crazy and I needed to focus on myself for a bit. Totally copped out with the "it's not you, it's me" move. He was surprisingly cool about it, which weirdly made it all more confusing. If he was involved in the creepy stuff, he deserved an Oscar for acting like he had no clue. After I pulled back, it was like someone hit the stop button. The strange cars, the sketchy login attempts, the mystery messages, all of it just disappeared. Poof. Like whoever had been lurking finally got bored and moved on. To this day, I have no idea what that was about. Whether the warnings were real, some twisted prank, or just a big fat misunderstanding, I'll probably never know. What I do know is that it left me a lot more guarded, way more skeptical about who I let into my space, both online and offline. And for now, I'm on a long, possibly permanent break from the whole online dating scene. Honestly, real life is complicated enough without strangers DMing you from the void. Hey folks, so with everyone buzzing about the new Dahmer show on Netflix, I finally caved and watched it too. Honestly, I barely knew anything real about Jeffrey Dahmer before this series. I had this vague idea that he was some criminal mastermind, but after binging it, man, I realized he was just a straight-up creep who lucked out again and again because nobody, especially not the cops, gave a crap about all the huge red flags. Like, it physically bothers me that he could have been stopped so early if anyone had just taken things seriously. But that's not why I'm here today. Watching that mess brought back a memory I'd buried deep. The time I, very naively, ended up dating a real-deal psycho. Not a killer, at least not a successful one, but someone who definitely had the wiring for it. Obviously, for my own peace of mind, I'm swapping names and trimming a few details so nobody connects the dots. Anyway, I was about 25 when I met Travis. He was older, like way older. I always found myself dating guys a few years ahead of me, but Travis was 51. Yeah, I can already hear your eyebrows hitting the ceiling. No, it wasn't some weird sugar baby setup. I actually met him through a coworker. She worked at this boutique he shopped at, and apparently, he'd vented to her about how he was trying to get back into dating after a messy divorce but felt totally clueless. At first, I was kinda annoyed she gave him my info without asking, but once I saw his pic, I got over it real quick. Dude was tall, athletic, dressed sharp. He looked like he was maybe 42, tops. Big age gap, sure, but honestly, I didn't mind. We started texting and chatting for a week or two. He was super sweet, had this witty sense of humor, and always came across really genuine. After a while, he suggested we meet up for dinner. Here's where it gets a little sketch. He asked if I could come to his place, and then he'd drive us to the restaurant. I know. Sounds like every episode of Dateline waiting to happen. But I wasn't a total idiot. I had my location on, texted a few friends all the info, plus where I'd be and who I was meeting. Safety first, y'all. So I pull up to this insane neighborhood in Hillside Oaks. I didn't even know places like this existed in Missouri. And his house? Straight out of a magazine. Massive windows, fancy-ass landscaping, the works. He meets me at the door and goes, "Come on in, I'll just grab the car." So I step inside, trying not to gape at the marble floors like a country bumpkin, and he disappears into the garage. I'm expecting, a regular nice car. Maybe a Lexus or something. But no, he pulls out this insane sports car. Like, the kind you see in music videos. Had to be a $200 K model. Easy. My jaw pretty much hit the ground. He caught my face and just laughed, saying, "I know, it's a bit much. I barely ever drive it, but tonight felt like the right time to show it off." I laughed too, trying to act like this was totally normal for me, and hopped in. We drove to this swanky restaurant he'd made reservations at. The moment we walked in, it felt like everyone stopped what they were doing and stared. Not like a glance, full-on stares. It threw me off for a second, but I figured, hey, we probably looked weird together. Him older, me looking like I still got carded at bars. Dinner itself was amazing, honestly. Travis listened like nobody I'd ever dated before. He hung on to every word I said, asked real questions, spoke softly like he was genuinely interested. The whole night he was locked in, like I was the only person in the world. The whole time, Travis was super respectful. No creepy vibes, no weird stares, nothing. Just easy conversation. Like it honestly felt nice. About an hour and a half into dinner, the conversation shifts, and he starts opening up about his past a little more. Specifically, his ex-wife. Apparently, he had ended his marriage right before they even hit the 1-year mark. It was this wild, 90-day fiancé type of situation. He met a woman from Argentina during some random meditation retreat in Costa Rica, and one whirlwind vacation later, they were married. Shocker. It didn't end well. According to Travis, once she got her visa, it became super clear they had nothing in common. Constant fights, lots of money issues, on his end of course, and she eventually just packed up and left him, but only after draining a pretty disgusting amount from his bank account. He said the divorce alone cost him nearly $30 in paperwork and legal crap. Honestly, hearing all that weirdly made me trust him a little more. Like, okay, he's a little reckless, but at least he's not still caught up on her. To paint the full picture here, Travis was the definition of a charmer. If Prince Charming had a slightly sketchy backstory and drove a McLaren, it'd be him. So, dinner wraps up, and we head back to his place for a glass of wine. No big deal, right? Except, the second I walk in past the entryway, I notice cameras. Like, everywhere. Little black eyes tucked into the corners of every room. It was creepy at first, but I told myself it was probably just rich people paranoia. Maybe he had some stalker ex or whatever. He pours me a glass of white, and after about 2 more for himself, Travis is basically knocked out cold on the couch next to me. I just kinda sat there awkwardly for a minute, wondering what the heck I was supposed to do. Eventually, I slipped out quietly and drove home, cracking up about it to my best friend over FaceTime before crashing into bed. Next morning, my phone's blowing up with a flood of texts from Travis. He was mortified, like full paragraphs apologizing for passing out, telling me how ashamed he was, begging for another chance to make it up to me. I actually felt kinda bad for him. We've all had nights where the drinks sneak up on you, and the embarrassment is real when you're sober again. So, a day later, we agreed to give it another shot. Same plan. Dinner, a few drinks, chilling at his house afterward. This time, it's a lot more chill. Neither of us is drunk, just a little tipsy and relaxed. We're chatting, joking, when out of nowhere he goes, "So, what are you into?" And I'm like, into how? He leans in a little and clarifies, like, physically. Kinks? Things you like in a guy? Now, just being honest here, I've always had a thing for older guys who take charge. Daddy issues? Maybe. Dominance? Definitely. So I told him, trying not to sound like a complete mess, that I liked men who were confident and dominant, both emotionally and, otherwise. He smiles and says, "Wait right here," before disappearing into the kitchen. When he comes back, he's dragging this giant leather suitcase. No warning. No hint. Just full-blown mystery movie moment. He pops it open, and it's filled with, I'm not even joking, chains, paddles, whips, cuffs. "This," he says, dead serious, "is what I like." Y'all, I felt my face go straight tomato red. I mean, this sweet, soft-spoken yogi dude, busting out a literal 50 Shades starter pack? Not what I expected, but not entirely a turnoff either. Honestly, best of both worlds. Then he drops the real kicker. "If you want to keep seeing me," he says, "you'll need to sign 3 contracts first." I'm sitting there thinking, okay, makes sense. I mean, considering the type of money Travis clearly had and whatever fancy job he was into, an NDA didn't seem that crazy. I wasn't exactly new to dating older guys with weird privacy rules either. Not my first rodeo with contracts. But then I asked what the other 2 documents were for. And that's where things got weird. He tells me one's a full consent agreement, and the other is basically a binding waiver saying I can't sue him for anything that happens in the bedroom. At this point, I'm just kind of sitting there, blinking at him, feeling my brain short-circuit a little. Seeing my face, Travis tries to soften the blow by saying the paperwork was for my protection too, and starts giving me this whole speech about how it was standard for his lifestyle, whatever the hell that meant. We both glance at the clock and realize it's getting late, so we awkwardly agree to table the whole contract talk for another night. I give him a quick hug, which felt a lot stiffer than before, not gonna lie, and dip out. The entire drive home, my brain was just a hamster wheel on fire. I kept replaying the last hour over and over. The weird suitcase, the shift in his energy, the way his whole vibe changed when he started talking about the contracts. It didn't sit right. Like something deep in my gut started screaming at me. And me being me, red, slightly paranoid, but also not stupid, I decided to run a background check on Travis the next morning, just to be sure. Y'all, nothing could have prepared me for what I found. Serious content warning here. This is where it gets dark. Read at your own risk. So first off, I find out he's been married twice. The first marriage lasted several years. No idea the exact number because the timelines were all messy. But the second marriage? Yeah, the 90-day fiancé situation. That one barely made it past a few months, if you count the engagement time. At first, the stuff I found seemed pretty tame. Traffic violations. A lot of them. Like, way more than any normal person should have. Enough DUIs and DWIs to get his license suspended for years. Awesome. Nothing says date me like a probable drinking problem. Then I dig a little deeper. I find a few of his old social media accounts and a half-dead company website. Still nothing super wild yet. Just basic stuff about wellness coaching and spiritual retreats. LOL, the irony. But then, the court records. Oh my God. There were so many filings, I didn't even know where to start. Civil suits, restraining orders, criminal charges. It just kept going. I figured I'd ease in by reading the less intense stuff first. Spoiler, it was still insane. Apparently, during his first marriage, Travis got real into bondage. Not in a cute, consensual 50 Shades kind of way, but in a straight-up disturbing way. It started consensual, at first. Silk ropes, blindfolds, basic stuff. But then it escalated. He would leave her tied up for hours, not as part of a scene, but because he wanted control. Tied up. Helpless. And he would just watch her. Like, he would leave her struggling for hours. Hours. Without a shred of humanity about it. One time, according to the court records, he kept her tied up so long she ended up with deep bruises and bleeding blisters around her wrists and ankles. She was severely dehydrated too, to the point that she had to be hospitalized afterward. Just absolute monster behavior. I'm not going to use the R word because I want to be respectful, and honestly, I don't think getting into graphic details helps anyone here. But yeah, it wasn't just emotional or physical abuse. It was way worse than that. Repeatedly. Reading that, I literally felt my blood run cold. I had just been alone with this man. In his house. In the dark. And I'm not exactly a bodybuilder, you know? He could have overpowered me in seconds if he wanted to. And the sickest part? I was only on page 2 of the court records. There were dozens of pages full of horrifying crap this guy had pulled on women he dated or married. It kept getting darker the deeper I went. Apparently, Travis had gotten real into tech stuff during his first marriage, like villain in a hacker movie levels of tech creepy. He had installed spyware on her phone so he could activate the camera remotely without her knowing. Like, what? How does a random dude even learn how to do that? Of course, it didn't stop there. He tracked her phone, he tracked her car. He even had her email and all her socials monitored 24/7. He would show up randomly wherever she went, work, dinners with friends, her parents' house, even after she finally managed to leave him. It was full-on lifetime movie stalker behavior, but unfortunately, 100% real. He also secretly recorded a ton of their private moments. Some were consensual at first, but most were taken without her knowledge. Yeah, let that horror sink in. And when they fought, and God, they fought a lot according to the notes, he'd retaliate by leaking their private photos on social media, both his own accounts and hers. If one platform took them down for violating terms of service, he'd just re-upload them until the account got permanently banned. Like it was some sick game to him. And as if that wasn't enough, he even mailed physical, explicit Polaroids of her to her parents' house. Yeah. He sent actual pictures of their daughter, their baby girl, in vulnerable situations, to her mom and dad, just trying to completely humiliate her and her family. I had to just sit there for a minute after reading that. I can't even imagine the heartbreak, the fury, the helplessness those poor parents must have felt. Having someone you trusted with your child do that to her? There are no words. And, somehow, it still wasn't the worst of it. Remember how I mentioned all his DUIs and DWIs earlier? Yeah, turns out that wasn't some teenage phase he grew out of. It was serious enough that he was still reporting to a parole officer on a regular basis. But here's the kicker. Travis wasn't on parole because of the DUIs. Nope. He was on parole because he had tried to murder his ex-girlfriend. Yeah. Attempted murder. And according to what I found, it wasn't long after that he tried something terrifyingly similar with his second wife. I'm not going to get into the gory details. Honestly, I can't even bring myself to retype it. Just know that if the neighbors hadn't gotten involved when they did, she might not have made it out alive. That's how close it was. Every single one of his exes, and even their family members, had restraining orders and protective orders filed against him. Reading through those documents, I couldn't help but wonder how they were even doing now. The record said his second wife had packed up and moved back to her home country, starting fresh thousands of miles away. The girlfriends before her? No idea. There wasn't a lot of info on what happened to them afterward. And here's the part that truly made me sick to my stomach. This man barely spent any real time in jail. Sure, he paid out a disgusting amount in damages, money he clearly still had judging by that sports car and mansion, and his legal fees must have been insane. He did some community service, sat through a bunch of court-mandated behavioral therapy classes, and yeah, he spent a few short stints behind bars over the years. But in the grand scheme of things, he got a slap on the wrist. Meanwhile, the women he hurt were stuck living with the scars he left. Physical, emotional, psychological, forever. And there he was, still living the dream life. Driving that jaw-dropping car. Sleeping under a roof that looked like a damn luxury hotel. Still holding on to a cushy dream job that somehow hadn't been stripped away from him. Meanwhile, those women? God, I just hope they're safe. I hope they're healing. I hope life found a way to give them back even a piece of what he stole. The thought that kept looping in my head over and over was this. I was inside that man's house, alone. I was literally 3 feet away from being another story in that pile of police reports and court documents. I thought he was charming. I thought he was sweet. I thought he was safe. And in reality, he was, and still is, a monster. I am so thankful nothing happened that night. That we didn't even share a kiss. That something, whether you want to call it God, fate, pure luck, was watching over me and kept me out of his trap. When I finished reading through the last few horrifying pages of those court records, I felt physically sick. lightheaded, nauseous, totally shaken. It's one thing to read horror stories like this from strangers online. It's another thing entirely when you realize you almost became one. Honestly, I'll probably make a part 2 to this whole story, because just typing this out now has drained me emotionally. There's more to tell, but for now, I'm gonna give myself some breathing room. For the record, I completely cut Travis off. Went ghost. Blocked him everywhere. Thankfully, he didn't stalk me or try anything afterward. But there was one time I bumped into him at a local Target. We locked eyes. And for a second, I swear I couldn't move. It was like my body froze up on instinct. No monster hiding under the bed. No demon in the closet. Just a regular man. A man walking around like anyone else. Capable of things that would turn your stomach inside out. I still pray for the women he hurt. And I pray that karma, real, hard, undeniable karma, finds Travis and hits him 10 times harder than what he ever gave out. Thanks to anyone who stuck around to read all this. And please, seriously, be careful out there. You never really know who's standing in front of you. I grew up in this tiny town in northern Idaho, the kind of place where everyone knows your dog's name but not your middle name, if you know what I mean. Anyway, right after I finished high school at 19, I was held back a year because I got super sick in 7th grade. I started seeing this guy from a bigger town about 45 minutes away. For the sake of the story, let's call him Kyle. Kyle was that tall, broad-shouldered, ridiculously good-looking kind of guy you'd expect to see on some random TikTok thirst trap. On our very first date, he casually mentioned he used to run with one of the most infamous gangs in the country. Like, straight up dropped it in conversation between talking about his favorite fast food spots and music tastes. He explained that it wasn't like he had much of a choice growing up. His neighborhood was rough, and honestly, he made it sound like joining was more about survival than anything else. He even had these tattoos that matched some of the gang's signs, which naturally, I looked up later because I don't just take people's word on that kind of thing. The symbols, the hand signs, yeah, it all checked out. I know some people love to fake being ex-gang members just to sound edgy or whatever, but Kyle wasn't giving off poser vibes at all. If anything, he was the complete opposite. Super respectful, held the door open, remembered little things I said, and never acted sketchy around me. Honestly, he was so chill that I never really doubted him. We'd been dating a few weeks, not super serious yet, but it was getting there. When I finally decided to spend the night at his place. It wasn't like I had anything against him, but I'm naturally a little slow to trust, and I have this personal 3-visit minimum rule before crashing at a guy's place. Plus, between work and some family stuff, I just hadn't had time before. So that night, everything seemed pretty normal at first. His apartment was clean, major green flag, and he had candles lit, trying to be all romantic. But then, kinda out of nowhere, his best friend showed up to hang out. I remember thinking it was a little odd, like, bro, this is my first time staying over, and you're bringing in company. Anyway, Kyle's friend, who we'll call Marcus, seemed cool enough, but after a while, Kyle pulled me aside and told me something that made my stomach drop a little. Turns out, Marcus was also an ex-gang member. But not just any gang. He used to be in a group that was like sworn enemies with Kyle's old crew. It wasn't like I was gonna judge anyone for their pasts. People grow, right? But it definitely felt like a very weird, very heavy thing to randomly spring on me during a supposedly chill night in. And here's the kicker. Kyle never even mentioned beforehand that Marcus was going to be hanging out at his place that night. Like, 0 heads up. Not even a, hey, just so you know my buddy might swing by. so that already had me feeling a little weird. Anyway, after Marcus left, he stayed for maybe an hour, mostly talking about old times with Kyle while I awkwardly nursed a Coke. Kyle and I went back to his room, and that's when I noticed. Dude had a full-on armory in there. I'm not even joking. It wasn't just some old rifle hanging on the wall or whatever. No, Kyle had actual gear. Stuff like a bulletproof vest tossed casually over a chair, a couple of serious-looking rifles, one of which I'm like 90% sure was an AK-47, or something that looked way too close to it, a few handguns, and, I kid you not, a freaking grenade. At that point, my brain was just quietly screaming, what the actual hell is happening right now? But outwardly, I played it cool. You know, survival instincts. Later that night, we were lying in bed, and somehow, I honestly can't even remember what got us onto the topic. Kyle dropped another bombshell. Completely casual, like he was talking about the weather. He tells me he's actually still part of the gang he said he left years ago. I literally turned my head to look at him like, "Excuse me?" But he just kept going, totally deadpan. He went on to say that, yeah, he wasn't super active anymore, but if a job came along, he'd still take it. Oh, and by job, he meant hitman jobs. Like assassination for hire kind of stuff. No twitch in his voice, no smirk, nothing. Just pure, ice-cold normal, like he was telling me he worked part-time at Walmart or something. It was honestly one of the creepiest moments of my life. And look, I've met people before who like to talk a big game, exaggerate, or straight-up lie to look tough. Kyle was not that guy. Everything about his energy said, yeah, I've done some messed up things, and I'm not even sorry about it. I stayed the night. I know, sounds crazy, but trust me, I figured flipping out or trying to run right after that confession would probably be the worst idea ever. I didn't get the vibe he was gonna hurt me, but still, when someone casually tells you they've killed people for a living, you don't take risks. The next morning, I packed my stuff, gave him a half-hearted, "see you later," and bounced. Never texted him again, never answered his calls, not that there were many. And before anyone asks why I didn't sprint out of there the second he said hitman, trust me, the safest move was keeping everything calm until I was far, far away. Plus, not my first rodeo picking up on killer energy. But that's a story for another time. Kyle was always respectful to me, sure. But hot or not, there was no freaking way I was going to keep dating a guy who basically had professional killer on his resume. Honestly, I don't even know why I'm posting this. I feel kind of dumb putting it out there. But I saw someone briefly mention this subreddit in a random TikTok and figured, maybe it's the right spot to share something absolutely awful that happened to me. I've literally never told a soul. No clue if anyone will even read this, but if even one person gets a gut feeling and stays safe because of it, then it's worth it. Also, heads up. There's a brief mention of sexual assault. I'll keep it super vague, but just wanted to put that out there in case anyone needs to skip. So, about a year ago, give or take, I was doing what I normally do when I'm bored. Just kinda zombie scrolling random stuff online. Somehow I ended up on Omegle. If you've never been on there, it's this wild website where you get matched up with total strangers to chat through video or text. It's been around forever, and I used to hop on it all the time back in high school when I had nothing better to do. Yeah, sure, there are tons of creeps, but honestly, I'd had my share of cool convos on there too. You can put in little tags to find people into the same stuff as you. I always used alt because it filtered out a lot of the weirdos and got me people who actually liked the same music and vibes. Just for reference, I was 21 at the time. Anyway, I matched with this dude who went by Reed. We started texting. He told me he was 26, and I told him my age back. We swapped some basic info, and somehow ended up talking literally all night. Like, I remember looking at the clock and it was 6 a.m. We were deep into chatting about philosophy, stupid life theories, and all the random stuff you only say when you're sleep deprived, but vibing. At one point, we started talking about where we lived, and he suddenly goes, "Hey, we should meet up sometime." I kinda laughed it off at first, but nope, he was dead serious. Turns out we only lived about 3 to 4 hours apart, so he wasn't just joking around. Normally, I'm a ball of anxiety when it comes to meeting strangers, but for some reason, after hours and hours of conversation, I convinced myself he was probably chill. Like, no major red flags, right? So, I said yes. Dumb, I know. I've always been one of those people who wants to believe the best in others, even when my gut is screaming otherwise. Next thing I know, we're planning a camping trip. He was really pushing for it to happen just a few days later because that's when he had time off work. I was free too, so I figured, why not? I asked for his number so we could plan stuff outside of Omegle. He sent it over. I texted, and immediately noticed the texts showed up green on my iPhone. Jokingly, I messaged, "Lame, you're one of those Samsung people?" A few minutes later, he explained he had 2 phones, one personal, one for work, and that was the first little ding-ding-ding moment in my head. Like, who needs 2 phones at 26 unless you're living some kind of double life? I mean, sure, there are legit reasons, but still. Something about it just felt off. I asked what his job was, and he got weirdly cagey. Said he worked for the state and had signed confidentiality stuff, so he couldn't share details, or he could get fired. I tried not to spiral about it, told myself he probably worked some low-key government job, or maybe even with the cops or whatever. Still, that little voice in my head wasn't thrilled. The day of the trip crept up fast. He picked a spot near where he lived, somewhere called Twin Pines Ridge in Pennsylvania. Don't worry, it's nowhere near my hometown, and honestly, I don't give a crap about keeping his privacy after everything that went down. Obviously, I wasn't about to just wander off into the woods without at least Googling the place first. I looked it up, and a bunch of stuff popped up about the old mines there contaminating the ground and water. Official state websites insisted it was still safe for hiking as long as you washed up afterward, but still. The whole thing gave me a weird feeling. I texted Reed and asked why we were going somewhere potentially risky. He brushed it off, said it was totally fine, and that he and his buddies camped there all the time. Hearing that kinda chilled me out a little. I mean, Reed did know the area way better than me. Plus, my parents, well, they have a sixth sense for assuming everyone is a serial killer. For good reason, though. They're just super overprotective. I told them I was meeting a friend I'd known for about a month through some video game. I figured that would sound way less sketchy than telling them I met some dude off Omegle. They were still super against it. Lots of stern, "this is a terrible idea" speeches. But eventually they gave in when Reed pulled up in my driveway. He didn't come inside or anything. Just leaned against his car, trying to look casual. My mom, being a total mom, rushed outside to size him up and grill him about where we were headed. He answered just enough questions to not get tackled by my dad, and after that, we were off. First stop? Starbucks, obviously. Reed wanted coffee because he said he was wiped from the drive. We ended up just chilling in his car for like an hour and a half. He had this little notebook where he wrote down every song he liked. Legit old school style. I remember thinking it was kinda dorky but also super sweet. Like, who even does that anymore? After a while, I nudged him that we should probably get moving if we didn't want to be pitching a tent in the dark. He kept stalling, throwing out 5 more minutes like he was a little kid asking for bedtime extensions. Took me about half an hour of low-key nagging before he finally caved and we got back on the road. The drive was about 4 hours. Honestly, most of the ride was him talking. A lot. Mainly about himself. He told these weirdly detailed stories about his old friends and ranted about an ex-girlfriend he apparently hated. I remember thinking, bro, why are you bringing up your ex on a camping trip with a girl? Total red flag. But at that point, I was already halfway to the middle of nowhere. Trying to pivot away from the weirdness, I asked what kind of hobbies he was into. I already knew some of it from our chats online, but I was desperate to change the vibe. He launched into a full rant about how eating healthy is mandatory, and people who eat junk food are basically brain dead. Then he flexed about only wearing ethically sourced clothes, specifically cotton and wool. Like, cool man, save the planet. But he said it in such a holier-than-thou way, I had to bite my tongue. Finally, he actually asked me something. So, what got you on Omegle? I just shrugged and said I got bored sometimes and liked chatting with random people. Simple, harmless stuff. He nodded slowly, smiling in this weird, almost pleased way. Then he said that he likes to get on there and pretend he's a Russian soldier torturing people while chatting. No punchline. No, just kidding. He straight up laughed when I stared at him like he'd grown another head. And when I didn't laugh back, he just shrugged like, what's the big deal? I was honestly creeped the hell out, but we were getting close to the campgrounds, and I told myself to just push through. As we pulled into town, I mentioned I was starving. He said we could hit up a Whole Foods before heading to the site. Inside, I immediately regretted agreeing because I just knew he was going to silently judge whatever I picked. And of course, when we checked out, he conveniently couldn't get his card to work and made me pay for both of us. He didn't even really try to fix it either. I was annoyed, but whatever. I was just desperate to get this whole thing over with. We ate quickly outside, and then finally headed toward the mountain. When we got there, he pulled into this tiny gravel lot with like 3 parking spots total. There were already some older dudes hanging around, smoking weed and laughing. I mean, no judgment, but seeing random guys loitering at night way out here definitely cranked my nerves up a notch. Before I could even say anything, Reed goes, "It's way too cold for me to carry all our stuff and set up camp tonight." I blinked at him, totally caught off guard. "Wait, what? I'll help you." I was like, "Dude, we didn't drive all the way out here just to sit in the parking lot." But Reed kept pushing me, telling me to get out and feel the cold myself. He was right about one thing. It was freezing. I cracked the window, stuck my hand out, and immediately regretted every life decision that led me to that moment. It was like low 30s, with the wind slapping harder than my self-respect at that point. High up in the mountains made it even worse. Still, I was pissed. I'd agreed to this whole mess expecting an actual camping trip, not a freezing night trapped in a parked car. I slumped back into my seat, scrolling through TikTok and Instagram just to ignore him. That's when he grabbed my phone out of my hands and went, "Come here," while patting his lap like I was some kind of dog. I was already so done with the whole situation. I laughed awkwardly like, "Yeah, okay, buddy," and leaned over to grab my phone where he dropped it near the floorboard. But before I could even touch it, he grabbed me, hard, and basically threw me across the back seats. What happened next is something I still struggle to put into words. He raped me. I remember squeezing my eyes shut so tight it hurt. I just kept thinking, please let it be over. Please let it be over. It's all kind of a blur. Afterwards, he shoved me back into the seat like I was trash, got dressed, smiled, and said, "So, how was it?" I just stared at him, tears pouring down my face, too scared and broken to even speak. He climbed back into the driver's seat, kicked his feet up on the dashboard like it was just another Tuesday, and passed out like nothing had happened. I sat there in the back, frozen, for what felt like forever. I thought about calling my mom. I thought about dialing 911. I thought about running into the woods, even though it was freezing. even though those men were still hanging around outside, smoking and laughing. The truth is, I'd already survived something like this once before. Watching my parents fall apart the first time wrecked me almost as much as the assault itself. I couldn't do it to them again. I was terrified too. Terrified that my dad or my brother would kill Reed if they found out, and end up losing their whole lives because of him. So I just sat there, silent, clutching my arms around my knees, staring blankly out the window. At some point, I must have passed out, because the next thing I remember is waking up to the car rocking from the wind. I was still sitting upright, curled into a ball like some terrified little kid. Reed noticed I was awake and chirped, "All right, time to go." I was beyond scared. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might just tear out of my chest. I started frantically scanning the back seat, digging through our random bags, desperate to find anything that could protect me if he tried something again. My hand landed on my metal water bottle. Not exactly a weapon, but it was solid enough. Clutching it made me feel a tiny bit less helpless. I stayed in the back seat, gripping the bottle like my life depended on it, while he started driving. I managed to croak out, "Where are we going?" He answered casually, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Getting breakfast." We drove back into the city, and he pulled into some random parking garage. He turned to me and said, "We're here," like we were just a couple of friends out for brunch. I climbed out of the car carefully, keeping close to it, not wanting him to get behind me. I thought about running, but what if he chased me? What if he caught me? I ended up following him down the block to this little Mexican restaurant on the corner. Inside, he told me, super casually, to order pancakes because he wanted to eat some too. Like, I was supposed to just play waitress after everything. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw something at his smug face. But I didn't. I kept it all locked down because I was still terrified of what he might do if I pushed him too far. I picked at my pancakes, barely eating a few bites. Reed, of course, was more than happy to finish off my plate like some starving gremlin. He tossed a few crumpled bills onto the table, paid cash, and dragged me back to the car. Without saying much, he sprawled out across the back seat like he didn't have a care in the world and said he was going to catch some sleep because he was wrecked from last night. I didn't have the energy or the guts to argue, so I just let him. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, how the hell can you sleep so easily after what you did to me? He ended up napping for about 3 hours. I spent the whole time glued to my phone, binge-watching random TikToks and YouTube videos to distract myself and keep from spiraling. Around 9 a.m., my mom started blowing up my phone, asking when I'd be home. I told her that Reed was taking a nap and I'd be back soon. She immediately didn't like that, kept texting me to come home. Honestly, I was relieved. Finally, I had an excuse that even Reed couldn't brush off. I leaned over and shook him awake. Big mistake. He snapped at me right away. "Next time, don't wake me up. Just play on your damn phone or something." I was shaking so badly I thought my hands might actually give out. I swallowed it down and told him my mom really wanted me home and that we needed to leave. He groaned, said he needed just 30 more minutes, and told me to set a timer. I did, even though every second of those 30 minutes felt like a year passing by. When my phone finally went off, I filmed myself waking him up, just in case. That's how scared I was. I nudged him awake again, and shocker, he got pissed. I told him the 30 minutes were up and asked, practically begged, to leave. But he just kept saying no, over and over again, like some broken, stubborn record. I was shaking so hard I was surprised he couldn't hear my bones rattling. I tried to play it off, acting like it was some kind of joke. I said, "Fine, I'll just Uber home then," and reached for the car door. Big mistake. Before I could even get it open, I felt his hand clamp down hard on my shoulder and yank me back. I honestly think I blacked out for a few seconds from pure terror. His grip was brutal, his fingers digging into my skin like he wanted to leave a mark. "What the fuck are you doing?" he growled. I was about 2 seconds away from full-blown tears. My mind was racing a million miles an hour trying to figure out how to get out of this. Thinking fast, I blurted out something about how if I didn't show up soon, my mom would call the cops. I threw in the bit about my dad working in law enforcement, just to make it sound more serious. That got his attention. Something in his face shifted. He looked panicked, like he realized he was playing with fire. He let go of me, and after a long, tense pause, muttered that he'd drive me home. I've never felt such a raw, crushing wave of relief in my entire life. I swallowed down the lump in my throat, grabbed my phone tighter, and climbed into the front seat without saying a word. The drive back was dead silent, except when Reed would try to make small talk that I answered with as few words as possible. I just kept my eyes locked on the road or glued to my phone. I remember wondering during that drive if he even felt guilty, if there was even a sliver of remorse behind all that smug, fake charm he wore. It was about 11:30 at night when we finally rolled into my town. We were cruising down the main strip when I suddenly noticed flashing blue lights in the rearview mirror. My whole body went ice cold. Normally I would have been scared shitless. I mean, growing up with a cop for a dad, getting pulled over is like committing high treason. But in that moment, it felt like salvation. The patrol car pulled us over, and 2 officers got out. My hands flew to the window crank before they even reached the car. I rolled it down and leaned out enough for them to see my face, one they definitely recognized. One officer greeted me, looking somewhere between relieved and disappointed to see me in such a messed up situation. The other told Reed to step out of the car while they asked me what was going on. I lied. I didn't tell them about the assault. I didn't tell them about the horror of the last 24 hours. I was too tired, too scared, and all I wanted was to get home, crawl into my bed, and pretend this nightmare was over. I also didn't want the cops knocking on my door at midnight and waking up my dad, especially not with this kind of nightmare news. While I sat frozen, staring out the windshield, I heard one of the officers ask Reed for his info. "What's your name, son?" the cop asked. Reed mumbled something under his breath, and the cop told him to speak up. When he did, the name he gave wasn't Reed. It wasn't even close. And he said he was 22, not 26 like he'd told me online. My stomach bottomed out. I just sat there, frozen, feeling like the whole world was crashing down around me. The cops, oblivious to what had actually gone down, just told him he ran a stop sign, but they were letting him off with a warning. They told me to get home safe. I nodded numbly. As we pulled away, everything inside me boiled over. I turned toward him, completely losing it. "Why did you lie to me? What the fuck is wrong with you?" He looked genuinely shaken by the volume of my yelling. Good, honestly. And started sputtering some crap about how he only lied about his identity for his own protection. Protection from what, dude? You're the danger. I was beyond disgusted. I kept screaming at him all the way back to my house. No mercy, no calm voice, just pure rage pouring out because the reality of what he'd done was finally hitting me full force. When we pulled into my driveway, I didn't even wait for the car to stop moving properly. I threw the door open and started hurling my stuff onto the lawn just to get away from him faster. He tried to talk again, tried to spit out more weak excuses, but I turned around and screamed, "Get the fuck away from me! I never want to see you again!" I scooped up my bags, bolted inside, and slammed my bedroom door shut. My parents were still sleeping soundly, totally unaware of the nightmare I had just lived through. I woke my mom up just to tell her I was home, like she asked. She smiled sleepily and went back to bed. Meanwhile, I collapsed onto my bed and absolutely broke down. Everything caught up to me at once. I was shaking and sobbing into my blanket when my phone buzzed. I wiped my eyes and looked. It was a text from Reed. "I'm sorry about what happened. I really am. If it makes you feel any better, I just got pulled over, so that's my karma, I guess. Let me know if you want to talk." I thought I was going to throw up right then and there. I immediately took a screenshot of the message, blocked his number, deleted his contact, and that was that. I haven't heard from him since, and I pray I never do. Since then, I basically haven't hung out with anyone new. Only my boyfriend. And even then, it took a long time for me to feel remotely safe again. I still think about it. A lot. It hits me at random. Sometimes when I'm at the grocery store and a stranger gets too close in the aisle. That cold rush of fear never fully goes away. And yeah, I know. I know I shouldn't have met up with someone I barely knew. I know it was reckless. But I genuinely thought he was a normal person, or at least not a complete monster. I ignored my instincts. I ignored all the flashing warning signs. And I'll never, ever do that again. Honestly, I don't even want to think about what could have happened if I hadn't lied about the police. It still haunts me. While trying to process everything after I got home, I Googled Twin Pines Ridge again just out of curiosity, and found a link that made my stomach churn. Turns out the place's real name was something else entirely. Carter Mountain North Trail Loop in Pennsylvania. If you made it this far in my story, please let this stick in your head. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Please, I'm begging you. Do not meet strangers from the internet, no matter how normal they seem or how good they look. I know this was super long, and I'm sorry for dumping all of this here. It took a lot to even type it all out. But if sharing this helps even one person stay safe, then it's worth it. What happened to me was horrific, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And to Reed, wherever you are, fuck you. I hope you're rotting in a jail cell or worse. Edit. For anyone concerned, yes, I'm getting help. I go to EMDR therapy every week, and my therapists, doctors, and psychiatrists all know about what happened. I'm not ready to tell my parents or friends about the full story. Honestly, it would just break their hearts even more, and I'm still trying to heal myself first. I'm doing a lot better now, and I'm going to keep pushing forward. Thankfully, after that night, I never heard from Reed again. From what I've seen, he's been pulled over multiple times since then, so at least his name is in the system now. I shared this because I want to spread awareness. Feel free to share it with your sisters, cousins, friends, anyone who needs the reminder that your instincts exist for a reason. Stay safe out there. I'm a 33-year-old dude now, but this happened back when I was about 27. Honestly, I've never been great with women, mostly because I'm super introverted and pretty awkward in social settings. When I was younger, I'd force myself to tag along with buddies to bars and parties, but man, I always felt like a fish out of water. Crowded spaces just aren't my vibe at all. Dance clubs? Absolute nightmare fuel for me. Because of all that, meeting women has always been a struggle. It's not that I'm a troll or anything. I'm fairly tall, stay in decent shape, and don't look half bad when I actually try. Since dating apps are all about your pics, I figured I kinda had an edge there. I'd rather someone swipe on my face than experience my weird, anxious rambling right off the bat. Anyway, I was using OkCupid and ended up chatting with this absolutely stunning woman named Vanessa. I'm talking straight up Instagram model levels of gorgeous. Honestly, I thought it was a catfish situation at first. But she kept messaging me back, every single night for almost 3 weeks. It was wild. Eventually, she suggested we should meet up. Not me, her. which honestly should have set off more alarms in my head, but my brain was just doing cartwheels at the thought. I figured we'd grab a bite somewhere casual, but Vanessa told me to come over to her place instead, like, straight up invited me over. I know. Dumb move, but I agreed. When the night rolled around, I hopped on the city bus and made my way to the address she gave me. I was expecting some fancy downtown loft or sleek condo. You know, something that matched the vibe she gave off online. Instead, I ended up standing in front of this beat-up old house on the outskirts of Millstone, Ohio. It looked like it hadn't seen a maintenance guy in like 20 years. It was a one-story, kind of squished-looking house with a cracked concrete driveway and a double garage. The siding was this sad, faded green color, with big chunks just missing. And the roof. Man. The roof. It was covered in these battered gray shingles that looked like they were about 5 storms away from sliding off completely. The weirdest part? No lights were on. Not inside, not outside. I stood there for a second, double-checking the address on my phone like 5 times, wondering if I had somehow gotten punked. I shot Vanessa a quick text, asking if I was actually at the right place. Almost immediately, she messaged back saying, "Yeah, just come in through the garage." I looked over, and sure enough, the garage door was cracked open at the bottom. There was maybe a 3-foot gap, just big enough for someone to duck under without fully crawling on their stomach. It gave me a weird feeling in my gut, like a silent little alarm going off. But again, beautiful girl asking me to come in. My brain wasn't exactly operating at full capacity. I hyped myself up, walked up the cracked driveway toward the garage, and crouched down to peek inside. There was this one weak, flickering bulb hanging way in the far corner. No car, no clutter, just this big, empty, shadowy space that smelled like damp concrete and old oil. I hesitated for a second, then sucked in a breath, ducked lower, and slid through the gap. I stood up, brushing dust off my jeans, and that's when I saw him. There was a guy, full-on ski mask, standing dead still across the garage, and he was holding a knife. The second our eyes met, I heard the garage door motor kick in, and it started closing fast. At the same time, this dude charged at me. Somehow, pure panic reflex took over. I dropped straight to the floor, rolled under the closing door just as it slammed down behind me. Seriously, I felt the edge of it skim the back of my jacket. I scrambled to my feet like a cat that had just been launched into the air and booked it down the street, sprinting like my life depended on it. Because, you know, it probably did. I didn't stop until I hit this busy Dunkin' Donuts a few blocks away. There were tons of people inside, lights bright, music playing. Honestly, it felt like walking into a safe zone in a horror game. I hunched over, catching my breath, heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. I thought about calling the cops. I really did. But I didn't. Partly because I was embarrassed as hell. Like, who just walks into a stranger's sketchy garage at night because a pretty girl on OkCupid told them to? Also, part of me hated that I was even on dating apps at all. It just felt pathetic at the time. So yeah, I made the stupid decision to just leave it alone and try to forget it ever happened. Fast forward about a year later, I'm eating breakfast and flipping through the news, and there's a report about someone who had been lured into a setup just like mine. Only they didn't get out. I felt like I got punched in the gut. Still do, honestly. Every now and then, I wonder if speaking up back then could have saved somebody's life. It's one of those things I don't think I'll ever fully forgive myself for. I used to live in this tiny little farm town called Marion, Alabama, about 3 years ago. Honestly, it was one of those places where everybody knew everybody, And if you sneezed wrong, your grandma would hear about it by dinner. Anyway, out of sheer boredom one night, I hopped on Tinder just to swipe around and see if there was anything remotely interesting within 50 miles. That's when I stumbled across this dude who looked a few years older than me. I had just turned 23 back then. Let's call him Josh. I swiped right without thinking much of it. And boom, we matched. The weird part? His location said he was less than half a mile away, which kinda made my skin crawl a little if I'm being honest. I've had my fair share of bad experiences with guys before, so I tend to be super cautious now. When Josh and I started talking, it felt different, and not in a good way. Like, normally I'm chatty and cracking jokes right away, but with him, I was way more reserved. Something about the way he texted just didn't sit right. Pretty quickly, he told me he was training for the police academy. Which, okay, sounded respectable enough on the surface. After just a few days of back and forth, he asked if I wanted to hang out. I had this gnawing gut feeling that something was off, but I agreed. Only if we met somewhere really public, like a coffee shop or a Walmart parking lot or something. No way was I doing anything sketchy. But then the night before we were supposed to meet, Josh hits me up at like 11 p.m., asking if he could just swing by my place real quick. Like, what? Immediately, every alarm bell in my head started screaming. I told him no, super firmly, and reminded him we already had plans to meet the next day. Instead of dropping it, he kept pushing, trying to guilt-trip me about how his ex was paranoid like I was. Like somehow that was supposed to convince me? If anything, it just screamed red flags even louder. I stuck to my guns and told him no again, probably even more bluntly than before. So the next day rolls around and, shocker, Josh totally ghosts me. Not that I was even surprised at that point. I just shrugged it off, grabbed a coffee, and went about my day like nothing happened. I figured, okay, weird dude, but at least that's over with. Well, not quite. Later that week, I'm scrolling through Tinder again because, apparently, I hadn't learned my lesson yet. And who pops up? Freaking Josh. Again. I guess my bored, mildly chaotic early 20s brain thought, what could possibly go wrong? And I matched with him a second time. This time, though, I immediately called him out for being creepy. Josh didn't even try to deny it. Instead, he hit me with this weird ego trip about how I should be grateful because he was hot, and I was lucky he even wanted me. I actually laughed out loud at that and blocked him right then and there. Fast forward a few days, and guess who's back on my screen? But now with a brand new Tinder profile. Yep, Josh. Round 3. Only this time he had switched it up and claimed he was in the military. Like, bro, come on. At least try to be subtle. I swiped right again. Not because I wanted to talk, but just to tell him, straight up, to leave me the hell alone and stop making fake accounts. And for what it's worth, I was always super careful about not giving out my phone number or socials to random people online, especially because of stuff like this. Josh tried one more desperate move, saying he really wanted me, and we could just be casual, friends with benefits, if that made it easier. I shut that down immediately and warned him if he kept it up, I wasn't afraid to involve the cops. After that, he finally went radio silent, at least for a while. Months later, I'm working a shift at my part-time job, this little store downtown, and who walks in but Josh himself? My stomach dropped. I ducked behind a stack of clearance bins and waited it out like some kind of low-rent spy. I accidentally made eye contact with him for a second, but we were still wearing masks back then, so I just acted like I didn't know him. Honestly, it seemed like he didn't even recognize me, thank God. Later on, I found out from a few co-workers that they had chatted with Josh while he was in the store. They said he seemed nice at first, but gave them a weird, clingy vibe. Apparently, he had asked a few of them for their Instagram handles, but nobody gave him anything. Bless them. Once I told them my whole saga with Josh, we all kind of looked at each other and realized how close we all were to getting into a super sketchy situation. Honestly, we seriously dodged a major bullet there. So, back in summer 2015, I had been dating this dude I met through Instagram. We were together for like 3 or 4 months, but honestly, it was a mess from the jump. Tons of red flags. Eventually, I hit my breaking point and ended things. And not gonna lie, I handled it pretty terribly. Just sent a breakup text during a random Tuesday meltdown. Definitely not my finest moment. Naturally, he didn't take it well. That weekend, he randomly showed up at my apartment in Fairview, Oregon. No heads up, no, hey, can we talk? Just popped up at my doorstep like it was totally normal. I didn't want to cause a scene, plus I was dumb and kinda scared, so I let him inside to talk. We bickered a bit, nothing too crazy at first. He seemed to think we were gonna work it out, but I already knew there was no chance in hell. One of the main reasons I ended it was because he was insanely pushy about sex. Like, every time we were alone, it was a struggle to get him to respect basic boundaries. That night was no different. He bounced between sobbing, yelling, and then trying to smooth things over by being all fake sweet, brushing my hair back and trying to hook up. It was honestly like whiplash. I told him he needed to bounce, but getting him out? Dude. It turned into an event. What should have been a 2-minute goodbye dragged from around 8:30 p.m. until almost 3 in the morning. He refused to leave. Straight up just sat his ass down in my old creaky rocking chair, grabbed onto my waist, and shoved his face into my stomach like some weird toddler having a meltdown. I pried him off me, told him again, leave. Then out of nowhere, he started punching himself. Like full-on hitting his head and face, screaming stupid over and over like a broken record. It was horrifying and so sad at the same time. An hour after that mess, I finally shoved him out the door and slammed it shut, locking every single bolt I had. But then the real nightmare started. He sat just outside the door, bawling his eyes out so loudly it honestly sounded fake. It was this deep, howling cry that gave me chills. After a few minutes, I peeked through the peephole and saw him sitting in his car, dragging a razor blade across his thigh. Over and over. Blood was everywhere. A few minutes later, he stumbled back onto my porch, blood all down his jeans, asking me to hand him some bandages so he could clean up and leave. Like that was supposed to make it all normal. I was completely freaking out at this point. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I owned, waited until he staggered back toward his car, then cracked the door open and threw a first aid kit and some towels out onto the steps. Slammed the door again, locked it, armed my security system, and hid in my bedroom with the knife under my pillow. He didn't leave immediately either. Nope. He sat there crying and muttering to himself for another hour and a half before he finally drove off into the night. And yeah, looking back, I know I should have called the cops right away. But he already had a record, and I stupidly felt sorry for him. I just didn't want to be the final nail in his coffin, you know? But holy hell. That night still gives me chills when I think about it. Buckle up, because this mess still haunts me. So hey, I'm Emma, and this story kicks off about 9 years ago. I was 24, and I had just started dating this guy. Let's call him Dylan. Things moved fast. We were only a thing for like half a year, but oh boy, it felt like longer. Some mutuals had pulled me aside early on and were like, "Girl, watch out, he's clingy as hell and a total control freak." But, you know, At that point, he seemed super sweet, and I brushed it off like a moron. There were these nights we'd hit up bars in New Haven or some random dive in Fairfield, and if some random dude even glanced my way, Dylan would suddenly go full alpha male, like clamping his hand on mine or slinging his arm around me like he was staking a claim. It didn't even bother me that much, honestly, because getting hit on by sweaty strangers, hard pass. But then things started to get exhausting. Dylan needed to be around me 24/7. If I even hinted that I needed a night to just vibe on my couch alone, he'd pull the guilt trip card. Like, hardcore. I'm super into my own space, like it's almost a personality trait at this point. So the clinginess started grating on me fast. Around month 8, it really hit the fan. And here's the part that still gives me shivers, even now. Since 6th grade, my ride or die has been this amazing dude. I'll call him Jonah. We were basically siblings growing up. Like, our families even went on vacations together. Jonah's an only kid, and he always treated me like his annoying little sister. I knew way before he ever said it out loud that he was gay. I even stood next to him when he came out to his parents during our junior year of high school. Fast forward a bit. Jonah ended up moving to Boston for college while I stayed back in Rochester. Life went on. He eventually married his incredible husband, and guess who got to be the best groomslady at their wedding? Yep, me. I even asked them to be my daughter's godparents later on. That's how deep we roll. Anyway, somewhere in the middle of all that, a super close friend of ours passed away really suddenly. It hit me like a truck. And at the time, I was still dating Dylan. I remember texting Dylan, trying to be as nice as possible, telling him I needed some serious space. I didn't want to talk, didn't want to text, just needed to be alone in my grief for a bit. Jonah ended up booking a last-minute flight to come be with me. He crashed at my place because it was already stupid late by the time he landed, and the funeral was first thing the next morning. Honestly, it wasn't weird at all. We'd always slept in the same bed growing up, even back when we were teenagers, and both our parents knew he wasn't exactly chasing after girls, if you catch my drift. So anyway, bedtime rolls around, and we both just crawl into my bed like it was no big thing. My room's way in the back of my house. It's a pretty big place, and my bedroom's kind of far from the front door. I keep it pitch black when I sleep too. Like horror movie dark. I didn't bother texting Dylan to tell him Jonah was staying over. I was running on fumes, and Jonah had to jump on a plane just a few hours after the funeral anyway. I don't even know how long I was asleep before it happened. I felt something brushing against my face. I opened my eyes and all I could see was this blinding light. And then I heard his voice. "You know, I could kill you both right now," Dylan said, real casual. And no one would even know I was here. He was standing over us, with a gun. My heart almost stopped. He pointed it at us and hissed, "So this is why you've been dodging me, you dumb-fing slut." Then he turned to Jonah and snapped, "You enjoy sleeping with someone else's woman?" I scrambled to explain. I was like, "Dylan, this is Jonah, the best friend I told you about 1,000,000 times. He's like my brother." Of course, Dylan wasn't buying any of it. And poor Jonah, who's like 5'2", and maybe 120 pounds soaking wet, while Dylan's this jacked-up 6-foot-tall gym rat, was trying to stay calm. He said, "Dude, you've got it all wrong. I'm gay, and I'm married." Did Dylan listen? Nope. Thinking fast, I told him, "Check Jonah's phone. You'll see the texts and pictures with his husband." Dylan stomped around to the nightstand, snatched Jonah's phone, and started scrolling. It only took a few seconds before the reality hit him. He hurled the phone across the room, smashing it against the wall, and muttered, dripping with venom, "You being gay just saved both your asses." Except of course he didn't say gay. He dropped a nasty homophobic slur that still makes my skin crawl. At that point, I was done. I got up, turned on the light, stood in the doorway, and started screaming at him to get the hell out of my house. As Dylan brushed past me to leave, he grabbed the back of my head, kissed my neck hard enough to make my stomach turn, and whispered, "Good thing my uncle was a locksmith." Then he pointed the gun at me, pulled the trigger with a fake pow, and laughed his way out of my house like it was the funniest thing ever. Obviously, I filed for a restraining order ASAP. He violated it multiple times, but eventually got thrown in jail over it. After the word got out, Dylan finally backed off and moved on to terrorize his next unlucky girlfriend. As of today, Dylan's rotting in a maximum security prison, facing charges for attempted murder, multiple assaults with deadly weapons, assaulting a cop so badly the officer ended up in the hospital, illegal gun possession, and oh yeah, drug possession too. I thank my lucky stars every day that I made it out. If anyone out there ever gets that weird gut feeling about someone, listen to it. I just hope he rots behind those bars for good. I'm 26 now, but honestly, my dating history could be turned into a Netflix cautionary tale. Back in 2015, I was clawing my way out of a hellish, controlling relationship that nearly drained the life out of me. Dude wouldn't even let me break up with him properly, kept threatening me with all sorts of crap. Took everything I had, but I finally managed to cut him off and spent the next couple of years just existing. Toward the end of 2016, the loneliness started creeping in bad. I picked up online gaming, mostly because I was bored out of my mind. At first, I didn't even bother turning my mic on, just wanted to chill and zone out. But then, this one guy kept popping up. Let's call him Leo. Leo and I started casually teaming up, and eventually, we swapped intros. He told me he was from Denmark, staying in some shared student housing while he went to university. He even mentioned the name of his school, which sounded super official at the time. In the back of my mind, I had this weird gut feeling something was off. But after everything I'd been through, I figured it was just the trust issues talking. So, I shoved it down and ignored it. We got close stupid fast, which now screams giant neon warning sign to me. But back then, I thought it was just cute. After a while, we moved our conversations over to Instagram, and that's when things started looking kinda sketchy. His account had no real photos of him, almost 0 followers, and he was following like 3 random accounts. His username wasn't even his name. It was a character from the Vampire Diaries spin-off show, The Originals, which, honestly, should have been my second clue because who even does that? Anyway, we kept chatting. Leo would ask me all kinds of questions about my life, but whenever I flipped the convo back to him, he'd give these super vague answers. I figured maybe he was shy or paranoid about sharing too much online. I mean, fair enough, right? I didn't want to push. One night, I randomly asked him to send me pics of his dorm. I was also living in student housing, in Ohio at the time, and was low-key curious about what dorm life looked like in Denmark. He actually sent me a bunch of photos. Only, when I reverse-searched them, they turned out to be random hostel pics from Pinterest and some sketchy travel blogs. Like, not even good fakes. I should have cut him off right then. But guess what? I didn't. Because apparently, my brain was offline that year. Fast forward 3 months. It's now 2017, and somehow, we're dating. We had built this awesome little gaming squad too, full of people from everywhere. Australia, Brazil, Germany, you name it. Honestly, it was the most connected I'd ever felt. Growing up, I'd barely had any close friends, so this whole experience felt magical. Leo and I would video chat all the time, well, mostly with him hiding his face with hoodies or bad lighting, but still. And I even told my family about him. My younger brother Nick was super skeptical though. One day, He straight up asked for Leo's school details. I told him, and within 5 minutes Nick was like, "Yeah, this place doesn't even exist." Cue internal panic. I started digging myself. Remember that blurry photo Leo had once sent me of him in his school uniform? Well, I zoomed and enhanced the crap out of it and realized the logo wasn't Danish at all. It was from a community college literally 45 minutes from my town, in freaking Ohio. This whole time, Leo had been lying about everything. And to make it even worse, when I thought I was 24 and he said he was 22. Turns out, he was actually 20. I was basically dating a lying baby. I confronted him. When I finally confronted him, Leo pulled a whole Oscar-worthy act, crying, apologizing, swearing he never meant to lie. And because I was stupidly in love with the idea of him, I ate it up. Hook, line, and sinker. He gave me this long, messy story about how, yeah, he did live in Denmark once, but after his family went broke, they had to move back here, apparently to this exact town I was living in. Wild coincidence, right? Spoiler, not really. Anyway, I told him I wanted to meet up, face to face, and of course, he dodged harder than a kid caught stealing cookies. Said we'd meet on my birthday in November. I figured, okay, maybe he just needed time, and I let it go. But honestly, after that promise, everything shifted. Fast. Within a couple months, Leo's sweet, caring mask fell clean off. He started pulling the classic "my parents are so toxic" card, blaming them for not letting him study anymore. Then it shifted to, "we're too broke to afford school." Dude couldn't even keep his own lies straight. But there I was, 100% emotionally invested and desperate to help. I was online with him constantly, being his personal cheerleader while ignoring the sinking feeling in my gut. And somewhere in that chaotic mess of emotions, I did the dumbest thing I've probably ever done. I gave him money. Yeah, you read that right. In our country, we use a currency called lira, and he said he needed 3 lira to finish his GED or whatever equivalent program he was supposedly doing. I scraped together 1 lira and sent it to him. I cringe thinking about it now, but back then, it felt like I was saving someone I loved. Of course, that wasn't a one-time thing either. Over the months, I sent him random little amounts, bought him gifts, even paid for gaming gear once. And literally everyone around me, my brother, my few remaining friends, even my old dorm mate, warned me that he was playing me. But I was so wrapped up in our little fantasy world, I just didn't want to see it. Over the next year, Leo managed to isolate me from basically everyone. I was only ever online with him, gaming with him, living in a bubble he controlled. And it got darker. He'd spiral into these depressive rants about how he couldn't afford to finish school unless I helped. He guilt-tripped me into offering to ask my dad for more money, something I never would have done for anyone else. Meanwhile, he was starting to treat me like crap. Wouldn't even let me leave voice calls when I needed a break. Acted cold and weird, like I was some burden he had to deal with. He did a complete 180 from the sweet guy I'd first met. Our chats turned into constant fights, and he'd say the nastiest, most disrespectful things. Every time I tried to end things, he'd blow up my phone crying, apologizing, promising he'd change. And he would change. For maybe a week. Then, it'd be back to the same nightmare. By March 2023, Leo had officially gone full villain arc. He'd make racist jokes, mock me in calls, and still refuse to meet up, always dropping some excuse like, "my mom's too strict," or "I'm broke again." Mind you, at this point, we'd been dating for over a year, and I still hadn't met him even once. Not even once. He'd throw in the occasional love bomb, telling me how he was planning to marry me, how all this suffering was just temporary, and that soon we'd have our dream life once he got his degree and started his business. Total fairy tale nonsense. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, physically exhausted, mentally drained, and realizing my entire life had been orbiting this guy who, in hindsight, was basically a professional manipulator. At that point, I was barely sleeping. Between helping Leo study, basically doing his online exams for him, gaming with him, and being on calls 24/7, my brain was running on fumes. And let's not forget, I was in med school, juggling full days at the hospital Monday through Friday, and cramming in classes on weekends. Honestly, I don't even know how I was upright half the time. One night, he hit me up asking for more money. Again, and something in me just snapped. I finally told him no. No excuses, no softening the blow. I was tired of feeling like I was his mom instead of his girlfriend. And, surprise, surprise, the minute I said no, Leo's whole vibe flipped like a light switch. Within 3 days, he basically ghosted me. No calls, no messages. I was stunned, but I refused to chase him. I wanted to see what he'd do if I didn't run after him like usual. He stayed online for gaming, of course, but the second I'd log in, he'd dip. Every single time. Finally, about 10 days later, he called out of nowhere, acting like nothing happened. Told me he was going through a lot right now, and couldn't do a relationship anymore. But hey, maybe we could still be friends. At that point, I was beyond furious. I told him exactly where he could shove that offer. Like, what the hell had I been doing the past year? Babysitting him? I hung up on him expecting, hoping, he'd call back and apologize or at least try to fix things. But nope. Radio silence. And then, just to add salt to the wound, within 2 weeks, every mutual friend we had from our gaming squad completely iced me out. I was so confused. Eventually, I reached out to one of them, and they straight up told me they heard I'd betrayed Leo. Apparently, he'd gone around spinning this whole fake narrative, painting himself as the poor victim and me as the evil, controlling girlfriend. Nobody even asked for my side. They just believed him and cut me off. When I confronted Leo about it, he denied everything with such smooth, well-rehearsed answers that I couldn't even argue properly. It was like arguing with a wall that knew all your weak spots. I even tried appealing to whatever tiny shred of decency I thought he had left, telling him I didn't want to destroy what we had. But he coldly said he didn't want to date me anymore. When I asked what I'd done wrong, he threw out a bunch of vague accusations, said I was too disrespectful and controlling. It was all just projection, classic narcissist tactics. After that, I cut off the call. But not gonna lie, for a while, I couldn't stop obsessing. I did a lot of snooping, and found out some jaw-dropping things. First, Leo had immediately moved on to some other girl. And yep, she was sending him money too. Second, I contacted the actual GED center he claimed he was attending. Turns out he wasn't enrolled there at all. The total fee he kept crying about? Complete fabrication. I kept receipts too. Every transaction, every chat log. And it just kept getting worse. The deeper I dug, the more I realized our whole relationship was one giant scam. Oh, and the final kicker? Leo wasn't even the age he claimed. He was 19, not 23 like he'd told me. Which meant I, at 25, had been lied to and played by someone barely out of high school. Honestly, I know this story is a little chaotic, and sorry if it's all over the place. My brain's still kinda scrambled thinking back on it. But I wanted to share it here because if it saves even one person from falling into the same trap, it'll be worth it. Please, please be careful out there. Please be. I had been clocking hours at my warehouse job for close to 8 years when I first crossed paths with Eli. He barely spoke a word and honestly just floated around like a ghost. Tall dude, probably around 6'1", and somewhere between 160 and 180 pounds. His skin always had that year-round, sun-kissed look, and he rocked this terrible bowl cut that made him look straight out of 1997. Eli usually kept to himself during breaks, hanging out in the corner with a beat-up thermos. But man, when it came to work, the guy was a machine. No screw-ups, always on time, and polite whenever we actually managed to talk. Over his first year, we started chatting here and there. It wasn't like we instantly clicked or anything, but slowly, it turned into something like a friendship. The only thing that drove me absolutely crazy about him was his obsession with country music. We were working in a dry goods warehouse, so sounds carried like crazy. If I was pulling orders a few aisles over and heard that twangy guitar blaring, I'd shout, "Bro, kill that noise," and he'd just laugh and holler back, "Suck it, man." It became our running joke. As we got tighter, Eli started opening up at the bar after shifts. Usually after a few too many beers, he'd start spinning these wild tales about sneaking into his girlfriend's house late at night. He was 23 at the time, and honestly, the girl sounded way too young, like 17, tops. It definitely gave me pause, but Eli was always a little offbeat. He wasn't a bad guy, just kind of different. Like, for real, the dude struggled with basic stuff sometimes. He'd mispronounce the simplest words and could barely keep up with adding change at the bar. I figured maybe he had some kind of learning disability, but he never talked about it, and I wasn't about to pry. Eventually, Eli started swinging by my apartment after work. He'd crack open a beer, fire up the Xbox, and get lost in Gears of War for hours. He even came out to see my band play a couple times. It felt good, having a buddy like that around, just doing the usual 20-something guy stuff. A couple years into our friendship, I finally met his girlfriend, Jenna. She was adorable, honestly, and you could tell she thought the world of him. She didn't say much when Eli was around, kind of stuck to his side like a shadow. But once they came over to my place one night, she and my girlfriend ended up chatting in the kitchen, while Eli and I were deep into a co-op mission on Gears. Somewhere between rounds, Eli leaned over and said, super casual, "Oh yeah, Jen's pregnant." I kinda just sat there, staring at Eli after he told me Jenna was pregnant. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. I mean, they both looked genuinely excited about it, so who was I to rain on their parade? They'd been together for a solid stretch by then anyway. Fast forward a few years, this was around 2013 or so. I had my first kid back in 2011, and Eli's boy, Caleb, was probably about 4 then. Total mini Eli. Same shaggy hair, same dopey grin. They swung by my place one Saturday afternoon just to kick it for a bit. We cracked open some beers on the porch while the little ones tore up the backyard. Eli didn't say a word about anything being off. No drama, no grumbling about Jenna. Nothing. He was just his usual laid-back self, goofing around, laughing at dumb jokes. He ended up heading out around 9 p.m., and I figured I'd turn in too, since wrangling a toddler all day had wiped me out. Couple hours later, my old flame Kendra called out of nowhere. I hadn't heard from her in like years. She cut straight to it, asked me what I thought about what happened. I had no clue what she meant, so she just blurted it out. Eli killed Jenna and took off with Caleb. At first, I legit thought she was messing with me. There was just no way. Eli was one of the kindest dudes I'd ever known. He barely even raised his voice, let alone his fist. We never even had a real disagreement the whole time I'd known him. But apparently, when he got home that night, something snapped. He and Jenna got into a heated fight. In the middle of it, he punched her in the throat, crushed her windpipe, and she didn't make it. It gets worse. After realizing what he'd done, he dragged her body out to her car, drove it way out into some back-road farmland, stuffed her in the driver's seat, and set the car on fire. Then he ran the car off the road to make it look like an accident. He lost a shoe somewhere along the way, like something straight out of a horror movie. then sprinted home barefoot, scooped up Caleb, who must have been passed out asleep, and bolted straight to Kentucky. Cops caught up with him a couple days later. He didn't even put up a fight. Last I heard, he was sentenced but was supposed to be eligible for release in about 5 years. There's a whole thing now where they're trying to keep him locked up longer.